Hey, good afternoon, everyone. It is August 12th, 2024, 4:30 p.m. We are at 100 Polk Avenue, Cape Canaveral, Florida, the City Hall Council Chambers for the City of Cape Canaveral City Council Budget Workshop. I call this meeting to order. And with that, Mr. City Manager, would you please lead us in the pledge? Thank you.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. City Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Davis,
Here.
Councilmember Jackson,
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Kellum,
Here.
Mayor Morrison,
Here.
Councilmember Willis. Here.
Council, thank you all for being here, and city manager and staff and all who are a part of this workshop today. And for those who might be joining in on live stream, we appreciate your time. If you do intend to speak, I ask that you please fill out a card up at the front. I do have a couple of cards here. We are at the public participation portion of the meeting. With that, first one, I have two cards, both from Miss Angela Raymond.
Good afternoon. I'm Angela Raymond. I live at 7048 Sevilla Court, number 202. I'd like to speak about the tennis courts. Our tennis courts are an embarrassment. I'd like to, first of all, challenge all of you to go to see what I'm talking about, because I think if you see it, you will fully comprehend the situation. The nets are tied together with zip ties and duct tape. Number one. Number two, the lights still are not working properly. So the groups that meet at night cannot play the way that they would normally play. I think it's Monday and Wednesday nights. I'm not positive. And the third thing, the scorekeepers that are on the edge of each court, we use those all the time. They are just leaning to one side. I think this is extremely embarrassing, especially when we have other teams come to play here. And every place around Brevard County that we play at, they're in mint condition. I'm not talking just about the surface. I'm talking about everything. And I think that we can do better. As the city of Cape Canaveral, we have to take good care of everything that we already have. This is good budgeting. This is good maintenance. It's like having a home. You better take care of your roof when you have a leak. And this is the same thing. We need to take care of what we already have. So thank you. And you will hear this from me every single budget workshop and every single meeting. So I challenge you. And if you want me to come out to the tennis court so that I can show you exactly what I'm talking about, please contact me at 321-501-7939. Thank you very much.
Thank you. There's two cards. Was that for both, or do you?
No, this is another idea that I have.
Go for it. Thank you.
This is called one of my budget solutions, one of my brainstorms. Cape Canaveral and Cocoa Beach are two cities. I've lived at a lot of places around the United States over my 54 years of marriage. Same person, by the way, Doug Raymond. And, you know, we travel a lot. So I look for things when I'm out traveling. And Cape Canaveral and Cocoa Beach, the people are so generous. And I've never lived in a place like this. And I think they have a philanthropic attitude. They're always looking for projects that they can donate to. For example, recently we had the Rotary Club come to us, remember, to ask about putting up the life-saving posts at the beach. And they saved the money and they paid for that. I think that's a wonderful thing. So my idea recently on my travel up toward New York. We stopped in Florence in the Carolinas, and I went to the Veterans Park. And I have video, and I also have photographic evidence that I can show you. And what I found there at this Veterans Park was just beautiful. But the best thing about the Veterans Park, it all didn't come out of the city budget. Everything that I stopped to look at, each part of it was donated by dentists, doctors, business, Rotary Club, Kiwanis, Daughters of the Revolution, auxiliary from the VFW, American Legion. So the way that we could stretch our budget, for example, if we want to enhance Veterans Park, or if we want to do things over at the Civic Hub, is we go to ask our community and our different organizations. And hopefully they will contribute because everybody has a special something that they're interested in. Like me, tennis courts. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate that and the idea. The name of that, was it Florence, Carolina? South? Sounds like.
There's a huge difference.
Thank you.
North Carolina is pretty.
That is all the cards those are all the cards I have now. If anyone intended to speak, please bring one, come on forward. Seeing none, for those who are home and would like to participate during this time of the meeting, we ask that you please raise your hand. We will unmute you and give you an opportunity to speak. Looks like no hands are raised at this time. With that, we will go ahead and close public participation of the meeting. Bring it back to the discussion item. We're at 4:37 p.m. I always like to point out when we are ahead of schedule. Just take that moment there, which is great. Thank you. With the proposed fiscal year 24-25 budget and 5-year capital improvement plan is the discussion item. And with that, I think it makes sense, if the council's okay, let our city manager kick us off here. Sound good, Mr. City Manager?
Thank you, Mayor. We have good news. City Council adopted a tentative proposed millage rate that was a middle of the road rate. We were concerned last time we met about being able to do all the things that we had identified that we wanted to do, but we've got some good news that we can get there. And I'm just going to give a broad overview of it. And John will be glad to provide more details. The first one is the organizational chart as proposed. Obviously, that was built around the situation we found ourselves in at the time, but personnel changes have now made it possible that we can keep the structure the way it is currently. So with 7 departments, that is not adding the 8th department. And my recommendation is that we keep community and economic development as one department for this budget. That will save us some $160,000. Yeah. Right. Also, your memos that came in within the last week or two, the fire department explained that they do have to increase some personnel there to meet some mandates that they're under, but also can push the fire truck purchase out 1 year, thereby saving us $136,000 this fiscal year. Also, we are very lucky to receive some favorable quotes from Oak Lane that just came in recently, where if I don't want to count our chickens before they hatch because nothing is done until the contract is inked, but we've gotten quotes that are at our budget of 800,000 up to $1 million, and there's some higher than that, of course, too. But I'm very hopeful that we're going to be able to come to council with a contract in September with a low bid of approximately 800,000. if things still hold. So for all those reasons, we can achieve middle of the road as the ad valorem tax assessment rate. Mayor John, do you want to explain anything else there?
Yeah, let me just start off by saying, I met with all council members one-on-one with the city manager. And we discussed all these different scenarios. We talked about the memos and whatever. First off, let me just say that the discussion I had with council, with the current news that we just got with the bids or whatever, and I'm happy to say this because I've been here 12 years and we were going into uncharted territories, which I didn't like, but we should not have to go into our unobligated reserve. And we had some detailed discussions with the mayor and the council members. And if things hold true on the bids, and we're hopeful they will, then the unobligated reserve becomes a non-issue because we had anticipated that potentially that project would cost 1.2 million. And if it comes in 800K, well, 800K is what we have in the budget already. Are there any questions on that before I go to my next
Council?
subject? Okay, you're welcome. Moving forward, I just want to put council in this frame of mind of where we're at. On July 16th, council approved a middle of the road millage rate, the 3.4941. Okay. And when you did that, what that required then is you saw my follow-up memos I sent you and basically said, okay, this is what it does to the budget, but how do we get there? And like the city manager was saying, well, we would get there by having to cut $241,000 out of the budget. But based on what the city manager just provided you, well, that's not the case. Then we make the middle of the road. Now, the reason I'm bringing this up is that by being at the middle of the road, what could be accomplished tonight, of course, you're going to have discussions about, maybe rollback or whatever. But I need to explain to you that since tonight is not where you're going to approve any resolution or ordinance or what have you, what's going to happen is based on what the city manager said about the changes in the budget, the changes in the organizational chart, we're going to provide you at the hearing on 3 September with a new budget that reflects those changes, and we will be at that point. That's as far as we can get tonight with the published budget, because since nothing else changing, even if council was to say, hey, we want to look at changing the millage again or whatever, obviously that's going to have to go to the September 3rd hearing where you'll approve that. Then Joey and myself on September 3rd, whatever happens, will go in based on whatever gets passed, and we'll make all those adjustments. So then when the second and final budget hearing comes on the 17th of September, we will go ahead and have that ready for you, and you will see that real time, that budget, that adjusted budget. So that's all. The point I want to get across is based on your actions on the 16th, you did the middle of the road. So based on what has happened here, where now council doesn't have to say, well, I want to cut this and this to get the middle of the road. We will prepare a budget for you, and that's what you'll be looking at the first hearing on September 3rd. Okay. Now, any further discussions about other cuts or wherever council may want to be, then that probably is what will be that might consume this, the rest of this meeting. And I believe that that's all I got.
Can circle back if needed for now, but thank you.
Mhm.
One technical question. There was a message of it being disconnected on the computer here, so just letting you know. Might need to
Amy's
look
back
at
there
it.
working with Mike on it right now, trying to reconnect.
Awesome, thank you. Okay, and I should state, Councilmember Davis did say, so everyone is on the same page, might know it, I think 5:30 PM.
Yes.
She will need to take off And with that, and thank you for where you're going.
Thank you.
League of Cities, I believe, the Cocoa
League of
Beach.
Cities meetings.
Thank you. I think we can go ahead and discuss Councilmember Davis, being that I think you have a little bit shorter time frame. If there's anything you'd like to talk at this time.
Well, I would like to see us just stay where we're at since we don't have to cut anything back or cut everything out. Because, I mean, we all know, once we put stuff off, we either never get it done or it costs us more money. So at this point, by staying at this current rate, we can keep everything, including tennis courts and everything like that, without having to cut other things. So I am for just keeping as is. I don't think we need to go to rollback, because if we do that, then that means we do have to cut back more. And I think, we're not, if it does, I mean, if everybody understands, if we do rollback, that may be good for this year, but do you understand, I'm sure you do, I'm not questioning, I'm asking, just stating the consequences that it's going to cost us in the next couple of years. The city's going to have to pay in the next couple of years. So I think we should just stay where we're at.
So stay at the middle of the road or the?
Yeah, stay at the middle of the road.
Okay.
We don't have to do any cutbacks. And I think that would be good. Then we can get our projects done.
You.
As I say, another thing too, just talking about the presidential streets. If we do go to rollback, then, we're talking about doing the first presidential street and then maybe doing the other ones later. I think that if we go back to rollback, then, and you may correct me, John, then we're going to have to take out a bond. And depending how much cutback, how much rollback we do, then the greater the amount of the bond. So we would have to the city would have to take out a bond to finish. Yeah, you can
You
explain.
mentioned my name, so I'll go.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, basically, what you're stating there, I understand what you're saying. If we continue, we go to rollback every year, you keep deferring programs, and then you keep chopping off $400,000 or $500,000 from the budget. When I talk about the presidential streets, there was a discussion in here that occurred. It's probably in the minutes someplace or whatever. But when we talked about a municipal bond or what have you, the discussion was, well, let's do the first presidential street, see how we land, and then see what's our path forward. Our path forward is going to be that if you're going to do 20, I don't know how many presidential streets, 14 presidential streets?
16.
16. If you're going to do 16, I could tell you that we will not be able to do 16 presidential streets in this city based on solely our budget alone. And the CRA, but I'm talking about collectively the budget, because the going to rollback is going to deplete the CRA. Okay, so just tie up all the ends. So my prediction would be is that if the city is serious about doing presidential streets and you want to get it all done in the next 30 years, it might require at least maybe a $25 million bond for 30-year note. And that might be what the city will have to do, because I don't see how the city could fund the presidential streets with the budget we have every year. If each street might cost, let's just say it costs $3 million. Well, one street might cost $4 million. 3 or 4 years from now, I don't know what's going to be going on with the economy. Maybe it'll cost $5 million. So the point is the city will not be able to get out and do all these streets without getting some type of bond or note or what have you. That's the point I'm making. It's impossible. There's not enough funding available within the city to do 16 presidential streets. We just don't have. The CRA doesn't even have that type of funds. That's all.
Thank you, Councilmember Davis. All right. The workshop, so anybody No particular order, Mayor Pro Tem?
Yeah, I'm ready. I got just some questions to start off with and then some listening to do. So, first of all, the fire rescue services are adding 3 full-time and 1 part-time firefighters. Means they're here. Is that because of the port? Are they sharing in that cost?
Well, I believe the fire department's here and the chief would love to tell you about that.
First of all, it is a shared cost
Mhm.
between the city and the port. But we have not, the city has not added a single person to the department since 2008. You've added 874 hotel rooms,
Oh, wow, yeah.
food trucks,
Mhm.
charging stations,
Short-term rentals.
and I don't know how many vacation rentals. And all of those are tasking us. And we put the truck off, but the truck is a 20-year-old truck. It's 20 years. It's a backup, but it's 20 years. So next year, we're going to be standing back here asking for additional personnel and that truck to be replaced. Before COVID, on your agenda, the night that COVID struck, was an agenda item that the city manager and staff had approved to add the additional 9 personnel that we needed pre-COVID. So next year, I will be standing in front of you, and I won't be so nice to John and say you can give the truck another year, because it's not going to be another year on that truck. And the sooner we order it, because right now it takes 3 years to build them. Okay, but the sooner we order it, and we always pay up front because it's a substantial savings. I think the last one was $90,000.
Less.
So anything else?
Thank you.
Thank you, Chief Sergeant.
Okay, like I said, I got a few questions. We can start out on page 22 of the budget. I have a question on that.
What was that number again?
Page 22.
Page 22. Good.
Under federal grants,
Federal grants. So this is the general fund 001 title,
yep.
think.
My question is, it was 956,500. It went down 70% to 285,000 as revenue. Is that the 285,000 that it was counted as revenue towards the Civic Hub, a grant that we
No,
were?
No, that has to do with the grants that if you look at your summary in your budget book, those like the BCSO and the C5 and those grants there that we put out to the right where they're
Mhm.
grant funded, that's what that is this year. Last year, that was a whole other ballgame. That's other items. But the federal grant you're looking at, we're looking at this year's now, 285K. Yeah, what that is too is council should know that when that's the result a lot of when we had the Hurricane Ian and these other things, Zach and his department went out and worked to get those grants for our projects. Not every city was entitled to those grants, but Zach was able to go out and get those. So when we do the BCSO project over here and we say that it's going to cost 160,000, well, 75% of that is grant funded, then
So that's where you
yeah,
got the
that's where that's coming from.
285.
Yeah.
Okay. So the 285 that was in the budget when we paid for the Civic Hub property, it was put in there as a grant that we were going to receive, 285,000. I don't have the paper with me right now, but
there was a grant for the Civic Hub.
that's when the
There was-
breakdown of the cost, there was the $285,000 grant. And that's why I was wondering, is
Yeah.
that,
That was a grant, if I recall, when that was going on, there was an expectation of getting grant funding. That's never happened. Yeah, that doesn't have to do with that.
okay.
But I know what you're talking about, yeah. But we had anticipated, that was back with the,
When we were buying the property.
yeah. Yep.
Okay. Okay, page 26. I have a question on the financial services tuition reimbursement of $50,000.
Yes,
When, it wasn't in the budget last year.
well, that's because the personnel, we didn't have personnel, members of our staff who were pursuing master's degrees, whatever. Actually, this young man sitting next to me, our investment in the future, that's money that's being put in the system because he will be pursuing his master's next year.
Okay. All right, thank you. Page 27.
What was the last page number that we just pulled up?
26. Under banking fees, an increase of 183.8% from 10,000 to 30,000. What? That's a lot of difference.
Just a second, let us look at our budget workbook. We got that all right here. Okay.
Thank you.
This is page
27.
27. And I was just trailing a little behind. Would you mind while they're looking that up, stating again?
The banking fees
Okay.
increased 100.
Oh, I see. From $10,740 to $30,480. Okay.
Yes. So Mickey, Joey's shown me here where he has actually talked to the bank and got the numbers. Wells Fargo has raised our fees considerably.
Oh.
Yes.
Maybe we should find a new bank.
You know, I know it's easy to say that, and you know what? That's the first thing I would say. However, changing your bank is a major,
Yeah.
major step.
I'm sure.
And so that might have increased, and you know, we're getting hit from every angle, right? But that might have increased, but it would be probably scary to know what Chase or maybe some other bank might be charging, because it might be more than that. But you know what I'm saying? So if the city ever decided to change banks, that is a significant undertaking,
Yeah,
you know, so,
that's a
but-
big increase.
yep, that is significant, yes.
Okay, on page 27 as well, the line for membership and training, it went from 11,300 to 60,500, and then it says minus 6.7%. Is that can't be right?
That might be a formula error, but let me look in the workbook here and let's see what makes up that $60,000. Well, what's driving that up, Mickey, though, is just go to the other page. That's referenced the other questions because we added $50,000 for the master's
okay.
degree. That's where that's coming from. And I'll check that, that formula there because that should be going the other way. So, yeah, just see what the thing is there.
Built that. So page 26 gives the explanation.
For the 60,000.
The tuition reimbursement, yeah.
Tuition reimbursement.
Thank you.
So is that just for Joe? I mean, is there any other?
I believe that's just for Joey. I don't think there's anyone else on staff pursuing their masters. If there is, I will find out for you, but I don't think so.
That just the annual cost for the masters?
That's the total. That's the total cost.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, two more questions and then I'm done for a minute. Page 91.
Hmm.
I know that we pushed the IM building out for a year. I'm just, as we look at this budget and try to rearrange things, or now we don't have to do so much rearranging, but I think this is an important building. I think it's important to the employees out there. It's been pushed out since 2008. And I think it's time that I don't know, again, we have to talk about it and discuss it, but I did take some pictures of the building when I was out there, and it is in dire need of some help. And if we push it out again, it's only going to be more money. I'll pass these down. And the employees, some of them eat their lunch in there, and there's holes in the walls, and it's very not safe, I would say, and not good for the employees and their morale. We talk about retaining employees, and it seems like Public Works is always the one that gets the chopping block right away for things that they need out there. I don't know if we can at all try to, find the money to get that done this year.
Yeah,
But
that would not happen this year. There are not funds available. But I will agree with you, since I think I've worked for the city, we've pushed that out every year. But that's because the other projects, were more critical at the time, and that's just funds we couldn't afford. So that's been getting pushed out. And yeah, the price of that's going up. But as far as doing anything for that project this year, there's no funds available.
okay. My last question for right now is on page 130. 130. The pump enclosure structures, 1,560,000. I don't understand. I was out there looking at them too. They're halfway done. There's some they don't have a roof, but they have, the basic structure. To me, and I should have asked this earlier, but went out for bid in 2015, 16. It got bid on. We spent over, it's been in the budget for 750,000 for the last couple years. I have it here somewhere. So my question is, why isn't it done? And why are we spending another $1 million on?
Well, this is a project that's SR funded. So I'm going to turn this over to June or Tim and let them explain that this is a very, very unique type of project that's going on, and it's could be a bit complicated. So Tim, if you could lay that on it.
Before, if you don't mind, project number.
It is in the CIP WW17.
WW17, thank you.
So in the 2024 budget, there was 750,000. In the 2022 budget, or I'm sorry, 22-23 budget, 750,000. In the 2021 budget, there was 301,000 SR. I just don't understand why it's costing so much money and why it's halfway done. If we put it out for bid and they bid a certain amount of money, why is it?
So the construction agreement was signed in 2022. So work started shortly after, probably in the middle of 2022 sometime. The engineer found a lot of issues with underground utilities and stuff, so they really had to re-engineer all the buildings, almost every single one of them, except for even structure number 4 they had issues with, which was the one with the roll-up door on the wrong side of the the building. It should be on
Right.
the inside.
Mhm.
But I believe that the funds had stayed the same from the time that we signed that contract. I will definitely go back and look into it. I'm not sure why there's different amounts in each fiscal year. There shouldn't be, and if there is, maybe because we were hoping or thinking that it would roll over into the next fiscal year and continue.
Mhm.
And that's a
So-
great part of it, Tim. Yeah, exactly.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's what I figured.
Yeah.
Like there's other projects.
Because it was partially being done and there was going to be this much work done. And I even believe that this is the project that has the amendment on it for the SRF.
Yes.
Yeah. And so that has changed the scope and, you know, it's a continual monster, I'll say, of a project. And, you know, hopefully it'll be done. What do we expect? Will the completion date be September of next year or?
Well, I'm embarrassed to say, but we had to extend it to a total of 570 days past the original date that we were saying that it was going to be done. So we're looking at over 2 years already.
And the government recognized this and they called me and they even, because this is taking so long and they understand where we're at in the project, they're not requiring payment from us on the loan because it keeps getting pushed out.
So, yeah,
So
so
we don't have to pay on it for another year now. Yeah.
Right, we had to do an amendment to the
Yeah.
original SRF loan to push it out further because of all the issues that we ran into doing this project. So that just kind of pushed the project out further.
So is there a way we could get how much we've spent already on this project?
Well, absolutely. We could just look in our system and see what, you know, where we're at right now. Joey, take a note on that.
And let John,
Dominic, look
let's
up.
also get back to the council on the funding history of this and the various budgets of the past.
Well, Todd, we can do that, but that's going to be a little bit complicated because if council desires us to go back to when, 2022, 2021?
Well, the whole loan was with Lift Station 5 and.
Since when?
Oh, gosh. For the loan itself
2020,
or just this project?
Yeah, no, just this project, Todd, or the loan itself?
Just this project.
Yeah,
2022.
this project, what we'd have to do is, we can go back and research that for you, but we'll have to see what was done in year one. And then we'll see where we landed and what the scope of the work was in year two and what represented that amount. And we'll see where we landed and then, the current year. So we can do it. It'll take a little bit of work, but I'll make a note of it and I'll send council I'll get with June and Tim and we'll send you a memo stating, how that program moved along and what the cost is. That good? Okay.
is it possible to use SRF loans to
This is
repair the,
SRF funded.
to repair the building, the 700,000? Could we,
Oh, you're talking IM building? That's not an SRF project.
could it be?
I don't know the answer to that question. Would June, that doesn't fall under the SRF. That's a construction, that's infrastructure maintenance and SRF's only for wastewater and stormwater projects. Yeah,
Thank you.
so no, the answer is no.
Okay. That's all I have right now. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim. John, Mayor Pro Tem Kellum, I just want to clarify, will you stated the year and then you shared the amount. Would you go through those one more time?
In the 2021 budget, there was 301,500 SRF funds. In the 22-23 budget, there was 750,000 SRF funds. In the 23-24 budget, there was 750,000 in SRF funds. And now there's 1,560,000.
So there's going to be carryovers there on things that weren't done. So it's not like that money was actually spent.
Well, that would be
But
good.
that
for-
SRF loan, with the totality of it, on where we're at on it, we could figure out that where we're at. But it's obvious that when you look at something like that, it's not being completed every year. That's why we're pushing it out and pushing it out.
Well, I think that the structures need to be covered to save us more money down the road to cover the pumps. So that's all I have right now.
And my final question before going over, I think Councilmember Jackson, Councilmember Willis certainly want to say something. The last changes we made to the informational only item for council agendas, where we started putting city manager and the CIPs in with how much, because we like this sheet that we're all looking at on the shared screen, we can see the CIPs we intend to do, but as the year's going along, it's hard to follow which ones were being completed. And so I don't have that last one, but my hope was that that might be able to help.
Yes, that's a good
answer
point,
the-
Mayor. Good point.
It-
And like, if you look at the August it'll be the July financials or June financials, Joey, in August? June. We always run a month behind because of the timing of everything. So that's the sheet that the mayor asked us to do 8 months ago, which has been a really good guide. So that will be contained in that informational thing. So if you look at the monthly financials, there's an Excel spreadsheet there. And what the mayor's talking about is any project that's $100,000 or more is represented by tabs for the various departments. And it shows where we are completion wise and the dollar values. So that will help a lot. That might actually solve that'll answer some of our questions. For the sake of not being confused, I purposely, if we're doing June financials, I advise the department directors to show on that same sheet that's right with the June financials where we're at the end of June, because we could show you where we're at the end of July, but the financials run a month behind. But I wanted council to see apples to apples, because like, for instance, Veterans Park, we show it was 85% completed in June. I'm just using an example, but actually if I had showed you July's with June's, you would have saw it was completed already. So it's just, whenever you see the financials, the Excel spreadsheet that the mayor's talking about for the CIP projects coincides with that month. Otherwise, you're looking at two different things.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Yes, thank you. Councilmember Jackson or Councilmember Willis?
Well, I know I'm going through my first budget process, and this probably has nothing to do with it, but I'm wondering, how did that engineering company, Tim, miss the utilities that were there? Because that can absolutely increase the cost of a project. So help
I
me.
won't be using this engineering company again.
Okay,
I
so
had no idea. They've missed a lot of stuff. This has been a very difficult project that's been going on for, like I said, 2 years. That should have been done probably about a year ago.
well, and I know how meticulous you are with the things that I've worked with you on so far. So I just heard that and I could not believe my ears, because that increased our project cost potentially with a situation that they created.
No, the project costs actually stayed the same,
Oh,
believe
so
it or not.
So
Yeah,
it
once
just
we signed-
extended the time frame then.
Right. Well, the
Okay.
time frame just extended. A couple changes that we made, putting a man door into one of the structures that should have been there to begin with. That, of course, increased the price for the man door. Things of that nature would change. But when it comes to other things, like when they were building structure number 4, there was an I-beam coming off of the chlorine contact chamber area that they had to cut off. And that was like $1,300 to cut it off. Things like that, small little change orders increased the price, but we're not looking at an overall increase because it's 2 years down the road, though. Thank goodness.
No, that's good.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, my ears could not believe what I was hearing on that. So
Yeah.
I'll pass it over to Dawn until I get to other things. I have some other things I wanted to pull out, but I'll
Sure.
do it.
Councilmember Willis?
Tim, did our contract have any kind of a delivery penalty?
You talking about on the time frame part?
Yes.
It can, but it normally goes towards the contractor. And since the contractor wasn't at fault, it was the engineer that was at fault. I'm going to have to look into that.
Okay. All right. All right. Thank you.
I want to circle back to what Mayor Pro Tem Kellum was talking about. And if we go to page 69, Councilmember Willis, I assume that was it for now.
Go ahead.
It was, I'm going to give this right back to you. I am very sorry.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
Just want to confirm that the line item under the, yep, capital outlay perfect for the pump enclosure structures. 564228. Yeah, pump enclosure structures. Sorry. 25,736, perfect. So that, and if this was said, I apologize. The total cost of this project, I think we're at that's the total cost from beginning to end to do the pump enclosures.
That is the total cost that we're showing for this. For me to know that. All right. For me to know that, I basically would just go back and look at the costs incurred and what's left, what work is left to be done. And we'll get the cost of that work. And then I could bring that together. Tim, on the 1.5 million that we have in the budget now, I can't remember the total of the SRF loan. Do you recall that?
I'd have to look it up.
And you know what? I might have actually,
I do want to add though that 1.5, whatever number that's up there is including engineering fees as well.
okay, an SRF loan, what SRF loan is that representative of?
W005048, I believe.
5.8, right? 4.8? Is it 5.8? Anyway.
5058, yes.
5058. Okay, so the remaining loan is $1.4 million. And the mayor's question is, how much are we actually spending collectively, totally on this project? So Mayor, we'll get that answer for you, okay?
That is it. Perfect. Thank
Okay.
you. So the total pump enclosure cost, if I'm reading this correctly, we have expensed $25,736 towards pump enclosures. We had, and in 21, 22, just like, well, Mayor Pro Tem Kellum, I think some numbers you were looking at, you were talking about the budget. So the numbers, the budgeted amount in 2021 from your research was roughly $301,500.
Yes, 21.
And if we go to that same line item in 21, 22 here, out of the way I understand this, out of that 301,500, we spent $25,736 out of that year. And so to me, when we passed that budget, the cost was, 300,000. There's 275,000 left over. Well, the next year we spend 256,000 of the 275,000 left over. And then last year, to your point, I think, Mayor Pro Tem, we budgeted for the 750,000, and we have spent that 750,000. Is that correct, John, this year?
That's what I'm going to refer back to where we're at on that Excel spreadsheet, and I'll look in BSNA and see exactly where we're at. But the way you're analyzing this, Mayor, that's correct. If you look at the first 2 years, they're the actuals. We spent $281,000. The mayor then goes into 23, 24 and asks, have we spent the 750K? I'll be able to very easily look that up and see exactly where we're at there. And then project where we'll be at the end of September and then add those totals to the 1.5 million, and then we'll see where we're going to land totally. But yeah, because if you look at your budget book, we spent $25,000 in 21, 22, $256,000 in 22, 23. And you know, it just keeps carrying forward because we hadn't spent the $300 and some thousand yet. And now we're saying we're going to spend $750,000 this year. And I'm not sure I'm not sure it's that close because we have not made that progress because we have had delays, correct? Okay, all right. Oh, Mayor?
Yes.
As of, okay, I got it up right here. As of June for this year, we've spent 357,000 of the 750.
Okay, so that column would be very valuable in this budget because there's not, yeah, original and amended, I think that makes sense. Like the backhoe is a good example where we come back in and added the 45,000 and amended it after the originally adopted. But just one more column of actual, Joey is giving us the information, 356.
357,000 as of June 30th.
Okay, so if my mental accounting is correctly, the original 301,000 that was put into that budget was pretty much spent in the first 2 years. And then we added an additional 750,000. And do you
Right.
see why it's a little hard for us
Absolutely.
to follow it?
But 281,000 in the first 2 years, we're going to check and see if that 357 is just for this year. Okay, 23, 24. So 357 and the 281, 813. So you're looking at $648,000 so far we've spent. And of course, the year's not over yet, but I don't know what's going to happen out there through September 30th.
So we know 357 for a little over $600,000.
Right, 648.
So we've put $648,000 into pump enclosures. And we still have another, I guess the question not for today is, well, how much more do we have to go to complete
And
it?
that's the question. Do we truly have $1.5 million to spend if we've already spent 648,000?
The reason why I rolled over that much is because of the uncertainty of this project. It might not need that much. We might be spending as we get to the next fiscal year budget, which I'm hoping we do start up again, and some of it might already be spent. The way I look at it is I tried to add it into the next fiscal year as one to be done with the project. But like I said, if we're taking chunks out of it as we're going through the budget process, then of course it'll be less than what it says.
Thank you, Tim.
Yes.
Councilmember Willis, thank you.
Yeah, I just wanted to follow on with that because I was thinking while we were talking about other projects, can we not put on the CIPs, the individual CIPs, everything that has been spent to date for that project? So that we have it all in the same place of what else is being funded further out, what has already been spent, what has been rolled over.
Well, I'll answer that question. Absolutely. I mean, it's something that's never been asked. I've never had anybody ever ask that question, but obviously we could take the inception to date costs when we do the CIPs for the next fiscal year and simply have a column out there or have inception to date where we're at and then have what it's going to cost for the current year. Yes, we could do that.
I think that will remove a lot of confusion on our part
Okay.
because we'll know exactly where we started, what we spent, what is still left to do and
And
what we have.
Councilmember Willis, with that suggestion on August 12th, 2024, I'm asking council that we will begin implementing that in 25, 26.
Okay.
If that's okay with council.
Well, respectfully, it is a bit feeling like you're flying blind.
What's that?
I'm being very honest with you.
That
It
we're
feel-
flying blind?
Well, when we just zoom in on this, no. That we-
Oh,
that
I was
we-
going to say,
that-
yeah, my blinders aren't on, not ever.
I didn't say, no, I'm
Okay.
saying that we, just take that one line item, for example, we see $1.5 million of new money, but it's really hard for us to understand that $650,000 has been expensed here. And I think the CIPs and the informational only, that's what, because it changes every month.
Mhm.
Absolutely. It's an
So
impossible.
it's in there.
Right.
Mayor, you're right. It's impossible for council to know the carryovers on every one of these CIPs. Absolutely. I agree. And then
Thank you.
even for me, we've had $2 million projects we've done. And then it only gets 600,000 along. And then we're going into the next year and we got to do 1.4 million, but then something's added to that project. And now it's 1.8 million, but then council would never know we spent $600,000 a year before. I understand that, Mayor. So we could bring a little clarity there. I got no problem doing that.
Councilmember Willis?
That's all I've got for right now.
Councilmember Wilson, I appreciate you, thinking about that when you're on vacation and coming up with that question in Alaska. I really do appreciate
I did not think about that on
it.
vacation.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, Mayor Pro Tem.
I have another question on the 68, the SRF loan proceeds. So these are other projects that are funded by SRF as well as the enclosures?
No, the proceeds are that's the revenue number. If you're going to have SRF programs, your SRF proceeds, if it's SRF funded, has to match your SRF funded program. So if you notice on page 68, your SRF loan proceeds is 1.5 million. Well, your SRF program on page 69 is 1.5 million.
Okay.
Yeah. So
Thank
that's just, there has to be a revenue with the expenditure. Otherwise the budget would never balance.
So this is just the line item, John, for that revenue? Okay.
Let's do this. How about we take a 5-10 minute break? I know that'll give Councilmember Davis and all of us just a chance to break here. Is that okay, council? We'll reconvene, let's say 5:35, just a quick one. Okay? Sounds good.
Okay.
We'll get started here in about a minute or so. Well, Councilmember Jackson is, but for the sake of time, I think we can go ahead and start back. Awesome. All right. Give it 20 more seconds. All righty, as everyone's coming back in, call the meeting back to order. We're gonna reconvene the meeting. We were working through the budget workshop discussion item here. And believe we left off. Is there any council members this time? Where did we leave off? Thank you. So city manager, I think you get to hear a few of us talk, and I certainly got some comments. Is there anything that you need to say or share from what you heard?
No, I said it all in the beginning, and I agree with all the things that we've talked about here, especially with improvements with the CIP form.
Councilmember Jackson?
Okay, as we have, everyone knows that I'm pretty focused on the fact that our citizens have a lot of adverse things going on right now, especially people in condos that are dealing with both the off the charts increases in insurance, but also SBD4. I know two complexes that were it just informed me that one of them had a $40,000 assessment, another one had a $30,000 assessment to fund their reserves for SBD4, which is before the end of the year is what most condo complexes are doing. Another one on Ridgewood just went up to close to $1,000 for their dues monthly. Now that's like a house payment. And we have a lot of condos in this area, and they're now sitting on the market longer. And we saw last week where the market crashed, the stock market. We saw cryptocurrency, and I've got figures on what was wiped out in the cryptocurrency markets and all of these things. So for me, I'm still cryptocurrency on Monday the 5th lost $1 trillion. The US market had 1.93 trillion. Japan's market was in a meltdown, losing 18.2% in 2 days with a 12.4% plunge on Monday. Taiwan had the first one and the most horrible one in 57 years. We had NASDAQ futures down 1,000 points, and Berkshire Hathaway was dropping shares. None of this is in your stuff, just so you know. So I'm still very focused on the fact that we have to, as a council, in my opinion, prioritize what we're doing. We have things, just like Ms. Raymond was saying, that tennis court needs work. You know what? That's an amenity we already have. So seriously, if we as a council need to go over and look at those nets and see what is needed in that tennis court, that's something we already have. We owe it to our citizens to maintain what we have. And that includes infrastructure. And we're looking at many things in the budget for infrastructure that are, past due. So as I look at this budget and I'm looking at the CRA funds and what we're spending on new things, that's concerning to me because we have old things that appear to me to be going into disrepair in some aspects. Now, the other thing, and you all know I'm focused on the stormwater and runoff down on the presidential streets. And just like Mr. DeLeo was saying, with the presidential streets, we have a situation where if we started with 3 streets, we couldn't get them all done with the funds that are out there for us to complete the entire presidential street project. And that's supposed to bring some relief for storm runoff. However, at a huge cost. We have experienced, and all of you have, runoff in the presidential streets when we have a short storm with, 2 or 3 inches. And so I've been working with with Tim and also with the city manager, and talked with John about this as well, about doing a small immediate project for stormwater relief in the area down there where the water is accumulating. Tim has put together a CIP on that. And Tim, can you come up and give us an explanation of what we've discussed? We have problems with drains, and we have problems with those properties that have full concrete for the entire block. And it was mentioned in both the Mead Hunt report and again in Kimberly Horn. And until we get rid of some of the issues that have been created over a long period of time due to people not knowing and not having all of the things built out in our city is growing, and we've got to, and in my opinion, we have to look at these things for our budget when we look at budget. So I've worked with everyone here, the staff and Mr. Morley and Tim, and it looks like this could be done out of stormwater funds. And so, Tim, if you would help me out here.
All right, so what we're looking at right now is non-presidential areas or areas that won't be impacted by the presidential street redo.
But in the presidential streets area.
But within the presidential street area. Thank you for that, Todd. That's a good clarification. Yes, around the corner.
Literally around the corner.
We are looking at full blocks that are nothing but asphalt from the apartments all the way out to the curbing. And we see that we could possibly put some infrastructure there that would take on hundreds and hundreds of gallons of water before it actually reaches the system. We can actually find many different areas throughout the city that we can do these small little pilot projects and decrease the flow of runoff through the Center Street Basin, as well as doing the Center Street Pump Station. So we'll get those little areas to help out as well. During the Kimberly Horn study, it mentions in there somewhere where it says, don't let just these different options stop there. Always look for areas that we could look for to decrease the flow of water throughout the whole system. So we have pinpointed a couple areas that we would like to do some stormwater infrastructure to keep all that water out of that system.
And would you describe to them, Tim, what that is? Because really it's not a totally insane project to be able to do. And one section that we discussed, what is the street that runs there by Fillmore?
I think we were looking at Magnolia, if I'm not mistaken, weren't we, Todd?
Yeah, Magnolia.
North-south.
North and south, correct.
And I had this in the last council meeting, but we didn't get to it. That's when the meeting was ended. So we have all of that. If you look at that agenda, it has all the paperwork in there. It has some aerials that shows you these properties where the concrete or pavement goes all the way out to the curbing. And Tim and I have discussed this, and with Magnolia, one of the things that I ran into in the lab with Debbie was that a couple of the drains on Fillmore, just a tiny bit of the debris resulted in the entire street flooding. And it took 3 minutes to drain when that was cleared out. Well, that's one of the lowest parts of the city, is what Tim educated me on. And this section that he looked at doing first actually goes down, and the storm drain turns into that section of Fillmore. So this would actually alleviate some of the runoff from even getting into that storm drain and going down into that low area. So now, Tim, keep going. I'm sorry.
No, you're okay. Yeah, Magnolia is where it starts for Fillmore. It goes down Magnolia, the four corners over there, heads down south on Magnolia, and then it heads, of course, west on Fillmore. The 300 block of Fillmore is the lowest lying area in the whole basin. So when you have an increase in water, that I'd say about 3 or 4 houses right there are going to flood on the road itself. So until the hydraulics come down in the whole system, then you'll start seeing the whole system drain the rest of the way. What we want to try to do is try to alleviate Fillmore from getting that extra water. So Magnolia was the closest spot that we could come up with. We're looking at, it's not underground chambers. It's more of a pervious pavement, I'm looking at different structure right now, but we would cut out a section of asphalt that's part of their parking lot, but within the city's right of way. So it is city owned property. And we would put this, the stormwater infrastructure right there. And as the water runs off the parking lot, it'll seep mostly into that area instead of going out to the road.
Areas are you looking at?
Personally, so far, I've looked at 3.
And it's all on Magnolia?
No, they're on different areas that still are part of the Center Street Basin.
Mhm. And are we going to get a CPI or CIP on how much it will be and what, is it in the?
There should be one in there under stormwater, SW10.
Well, go ahead. I was just going to say that what we're talking about presently. Tim has just added it this week, so that's going to be added to the budget when you get your budget book on 3 September. So Mayor Pro Tem, you're not going to see that because we just discussed it. So that's not.
Just to recapture the idea that Councilmember Jackson is talking about is this would come out of existing enterprise funds, not tax dollars.
Right.
But it would be something that's a smaller project that could result in water off of our streets. And in that area, we need to do something, in my opinion. So, and Tim is looking at the different options, but I wanted to make sure and bring that up because I didn't find it in here yet.
Oh, yeah.
In what you've given me so far, but we just did it.
We just did it. So
Yeah.
you're going to see it in the, it's when
It'll
when
be in
Joey
the-
redoes the book, he redoes the book, it'll be in the new budget, revised budget, I should say.
And Mickey, what you'll see on that CIP is you'll see for a 5-year program of $100,000 each. So for each fiscal year, there's going to be $100,000 that we can put towards these small little pilot projects to help alleviate flooding throughout the city.
I like it. That's a good idea.
So, and thank you, Tim and city manager and John for working with me on it, because we need some smaller things that we can absolutely count on being able to do to possibly impact our flooding. And Tim has had some great ideas and done a lot of research on this. So I think it's a win-win if we do the first one and see that the results are not as great as what we thought, we don't have to do anymore. But it's a small enough cost that it's worth bringing it to the table to take a look if we can get some of the water off the streets. We still have drain issues on Fillmore. That doesn't alleviate that, but it will alleviate getting a lot of that extra water out of there in the areas that flood. And so thank you, Tim. And so back to the fact that I'm totally in a situation where I'm worried about, as I talk to my constituents, I'm worried about the struggles that they're going through financially right now with this economy. And I'm worried about making sure that we're utilizing our funds in the ways that we need to make sure that we maintain what we have and that we're careful with what we build, because that becomes a maintenance cost too. It could be something as simple as next year, it's all totally different and the economy's great. And then we're back to building and expanding and things like that and building new buildings. But we have an obligation as council and as the city to maintain what we have. And just like Ms. Raymond said, we've got tennis courts that are needing work. We've got other things that are needing work, and we're looking at doing projects. Some projects are just nice to haves. I think we need to focus this year on the have to haves.
Thank you.
Would Harbor Heights also be a candidate for that?
Harbor Heights is in a different basin.
Right.
But we are looking at, oh, you're talking about for the year? Sure, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, anywhere, any basin. I mean, if we find out that the Center Street pump station solves all our issues, right now we're dealing with 1,000 gallon per minute pump, standby right there. We're replacing it with a 6,500 gallon per minute pump. I think that's going to show really soon here. But if that's the case, we can look around absolutely to Harbor Heights. We can go to the International Basin, Holman Basin if needed. Sure.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, sir.
I certainly sympathize with condo associations because I'm in one. And what I'm seeing though also, and maybe it's specific to certain condos, but we're not getting hit with these huge assessments because we've been planning all along for all of this. And I think that we have to also look at the way we're looking at our budget. We could be in a similar situation. We keep pushing things down the road or reducing the taxes. Nobody wants to pay taxes. I don't want to pay taxes. I really don't want to have to pay my HOA fees, but I've got to. But if we do something similar where we don't put aside what is necessary for what may be coming, we could be in the same situation with these big assessments where we're hitting people eventually down the road, not this year, maybe next year, or maybe 5 years down the road, but we could be hitting them with something as severe as $40,000 assessments. I mean, we're not going to get that from individuals, but we're going to have to raise taxes if we keep pushing things off. So I'm saying all that to say I would like to see us stay at middle of the road. I mean, it doesn't give the individual citizen the extra $40 a year, but it keeps them from having to pay more later on.
Yeah, and if I could just piggyback on what you're saying, is that not next year, but the year after, you had the chief come up here and said, we got to get the truck. And then he's got to add more people. So what he was saying there is his budget's going to increase $550,000, not next year, but the year after. So we got to be ready for that.
And I agree with all that. I'm not in disagreement with that at all. But you know what? We've got pretty things in this budget, okay? And we've got infrastructure things we need. And you're exactly right. We need to make sure that money's there for the pumper truck. We need to make sure that the building is taken care of that is needing to be finished. We have pretty things though. And the pretty things are what I'm questioning. Everything that we add that's new at this point in our budget, we have to maintain later. So just, it doesn't apply to well, that puts us in a bad situation later. No, I'm talking about we need to maintain what we've got, make sure it's right, and don't add to it until we get through this economic crunch that we're in. Because everything we build new, we end up having to maintain. If we keep going that direction, we will be coming at you for $40,000 or $50,000 too, because we'll have to. We're adding things into people's taxes that will have to be maintained. So to me, how we use our funds, and one thing I'm never a fan of, you never cut your reserves. Don't be cutting reserves, because that'll get you into a ton of trouble. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about prioritization of projects and things in this budget based on, is it something that we need to maintain now? Is it something that we're adding for whatever, or is it something we absolutely have to have? Those are the things, the difference. So I don't disagree with you, Dawn. I mean, I actually am agreeing with you in a certain way, different approach maybe. But I agree. You don't want to end up having to come at people later. But you also, if you're in the middle of a budget crunch, you don't go out and buy a Ferrari to have because you like it. You fix your old car, you fix your old whatever you've got if you're in a budget crunch. Now, are we in one? Well, you know, when we met last time and we looked at this and you pointed out the chart, Mr. Mayor, of all of those increases, our population is not rising and our property values are dropping for the condos, because now we're getting things like one person in a very nice complex listed her unit that she bought 3 years ago, and she listed at the market price that would have recently sold at, which was around $650, and ended up selling it at what she bought it at 3 years ago. So our market is getting cold. And when that gets cold, our tax that we're bringing in, if it drops, so does our ad valorem taxes. So to me, we have, in order to make sure we're not in a bad situation next year, we have to watch and prioritize our spending. I'm not saying don't do these projects forever. I'm saying things that are not necessary, we need to look at them and say, what do we need? I'm absolutely going to run over to the tennis courts and look at them, because I had no idea, I don't play tennis, that it was in the shape that Miss Raymond brought up earlier. Well, you know what? That's an asset that people already like. The pickleball players like it, the tennis players like it, and it's something we already have. So if we're doing new things, I think we need to be very selective about what we're doing right now for this year, not necessarily next year, but for this year right now, I believe that we do, because we're going to see changes. We're already seeing changes in our market here in this area for properties and property owners, and their costs are increasing greatly. I mean, when you're looking at condo association dues that are the size of a mortgage payment, that impacts people, and people will sell, and they are selling, and you know, it puts a crunch on our citizens. So I think we have to be responsible about how we spend.
Thank you. I could not agree more with that. And in fact, all the things we're talking about today throughout the meeting, so much of it is, I agree with. And it is if I understand, the first thing I just want to, we've talked about, and I guess this kind of drives a big part of the conversation, is the tax rate. We're calling it middle of the road. And I don't think the average citizen knows what that means. It sounds like a compromise, kind of meet in the middle. But the truth is, it is a tax increase. And so the three options we were provided were, I think at first it was an increase, a higher increase, and then an even higher increase. And then I think or was it rollback rate, a little bit higher?
Yeah.
And then a sort of everything or most things?
Yeah, and this came up at the coffee with city manager, and this is how I explain it. It makes sense to me, at least. When we do our CIP workshops, we say, these are the things we'd like to get done in the next 5 years. And then we do that before the budget happens because we don't even know what the revenue is going to be, but we want to know what we want to end up getting. After we finish with that, then we get our taxable valuation from the Brevard County, and they tell us what our taxable valuation is. And they say, okay, well, if this is the taxable valuation and we want to get all this done, we just do the simple math to come up with a millage rate, say to get there, you need to be here. So that becomes the top highest millage rate number. And then we always, since I've been doing this with you guys, we always know to look at rollback also. So we put in, well, if we go to rollback, what would that number be? And then we say, okay, let's put it right in the middle of those two numbers. If we hit that number, we propose that too. So council has an idea of that. There's 3 scenarios now to start looking at. The only one that's not a tax increase is the rollback. So Mayor, yes, you're correct.
Thank you very much. So those 3 options, rollback, the effective same as last year.
Same revenue. Yeah.
And last year, the ad valorem taxes were roughly 6.4 million, which was, as we pointed out, higher than the year before. And today we're looking at the middle of the road amount. I know if we can state that number again, or estimated middle of the road, will that bring in 7.1 million?
Revenue.
That'll bring in, Kelly, you can bring up your ad valorem calc.
And I should say, I'm looking at page 13. I think this is in a few places, but I'm just, the consolidated financial overview. It's probably not
So Mayor, just rounding off based on your question, let's just round it up to 6.8 million because it's 6,797. So 6.8 million.
Okay, yeah. And I actually had that.
That's with the 3.4519 and the library being 0.0422, which is, another 80K. So 6,880. So that's if you go middle of the road.
Thank you. And that revenue of 6.8 million is what percentage higher? What's the change in revenue? I guess it'd be 6.3 million to 6.8 million.
Right. So
Okay.
we end up getting another 500K if we. Now. What's that get us? If you go to rollback rate, Mayor, that takes you down to 6,620,000. So you go from, you're at middle of the road at 6,880. And if you go roll back, you're at 6,620,000. And if you wanted to get to rollback, you'd say, well, what do I have to cut to get there?
What was the revenue on rollback?
6,620.
6.62.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And let me know when you're ready and I'll.
I am. I have 6.88 million at the middle of the road.
Middle of the road.
And then it's 6.6
So that takes it all the way down to 6.6.
at rollback.
Right. And if you said, John, well, what do we have to cut to get there? You have to cut $239,000 more dollars. And if you look at the sheet I provided you, not saying that that's what you would cut, but if you look at this sheet and
The memo?
this sheet here, where it said middle of the road, what we had to cut. Well, not to confuse anybody, but we got to middle of the road and didn't have to cut anything tonight. Why? Because of what happened at the fire department, right? And the city manager cutting to one director. So that got us just about right to middle of the road. So if you said, well, where do we get that $239,000 from? Then you look at that sheet there, and that basically gives you, not that this is what you would cut, but those recommendations there get you to rollback.
And let's not forget the impact of Oak Lane.
Well,
Hopefully,
the Oak Lane impact by, if we get a bit of 800K, well, the good thing is the 800K is already in the budget. So council doesn't have to worry about pulling out additional funds out of
that's
unobligated
exactly,
reserve.
it's one less thing to have to worry
It's
about.
one
pulling
last
out.
thing you have to do. But so this council, based on the mayor's, question there with rollback, is to get there, you'd have to cut $239,000 out of the general fund.
Okay, thank you. Give me a second here. So roughly, the last year, we brought in 6.3 million. The middle of the road brings in roughly almost 9% more revenue. And if we decrease it down, it's another, cut it in half, 4%. But the rollback rate still achieves more revenue, right? Because I guess new construction and those things are
Right.
factored.
Right. And with the gross taxable value the way it is, yeah, it better too, because if it's not getting us more revenue each year, we'll never be able to achieve our projects and what have you. But referring to this though, the 239, that's exactly $240,000. Those particular items we had listed the last time I gave you this memo on July 22nd.
Yeah, I think I have it here.
And I could give you a copy if you need it.
Okay. And so can we go to, and we might come back here, if we go to page 78 real quick.
Yep.
The millage rate. This is really breaks down the increases, and this is a new chart that's very helpful because it factors the rollback rate. But we're talking about an increase of 9% or 8.94%
But
here.
Mayor, not to confuse you, remember
Mhm.
that this chart has not been updated with your middle of the road yet because we couldn't change the budget because council has to determine to balance the budget, what you want to take out of the budget. So what you're looking at there, Mayor, is
Yeah.
what you were talking to the city manager about the original proposed, the 3.6, the top number. But that's not where we're at. We're now at 3.4.
Right.
Okay.
And
And
if
that number is going to take you, that is taking you down over, go to the budgeted tax line. I gave you that number, 6.8 million.
Mm-hmm.
And then if you go down the rollback, okay,
Mm-hmm.
that's going to take you down to 6.6.
And the rollback rate of 3.32 gives us that. It's just to over communicate it.
Yeah. And that number's been adjusted a bit because the numbers have changed. The rollback rate it's combined, it's 3.319. I'll give you the exact rollback rate when it's combined. 10.0390.
Like 3.36.
3.3589, right? 98. So Mayor, the new combined rollback rate is 3.3598.
Mm-hmm. 3.3598 is
Right.
the new rollback rate.
That's what the new rollback rate would be.
Okay. And that will achieve the 6.62
Correct.
million. Okay. And last year we had 6.3 million. Rollback rate brings in 6.6 million. And
So literally, we were only achieving $300,000 in taxes based on the actions of if council goes to rollback.
okay. Almost done. Thank you for your patience. Yeah, so I would just back up now that I've got a better handle on that. The conversations that I think all of us have said up here is really about a priorities. And I agree with the fact that if we don't preventative maintenance, take care of things, try to the best of our ability, no one has a crystal ball, but we know, Councilmember Jackson, was what happens when markets act a certain way, how it impacts cities. We've seen what happens with interest rates, cost of land, and those go up and down. And I largely agree that, most assets do increase. So the statement of it's only going to get more expensive, yes, but in real estate and deflationary periods, we see, and that's not great either. But either way, there's certainly some turmoil. And the reality is if the property taxes go down, we experienced that the whole run up to 2008 to 2016, really, or 5 to 7 years. We saw that occur, and the city was getting by with 3 to 4 million in property tax revenue. Today we're looking at almost 7 million. And going back then, I want to apply the things we're saying today. If we could go back in time, let's go back to 2014, a perfect 10 years, I guess. Would we, now that's a different council from us, and they did not have the benefit of knowing what the future holds, but would we have put more money towards stormwater management issues, infrastructure, making sure that the statement that I've heard, and it's something that I think resonates and largely is the statement of most the residents I talk to, is to take care of what we've had. And Mayor Pro Tem, you've said that. All of us have said that. And there's a clear answer to, our assets and what we have every year. We take inventory. John just provided an update on that, and obviously our annual audits, we see that. And I believe, I can speak for myself, that it's not that you're saying no to the projects in the past. It's maybe they don't look like that. And that's what I'm sensing in this budget. It's something that we were saying back then. Obviously, there was a push at that time to see City Hall improved, fire station improvements. Even prior, we had then the C5, the multi-generational facilities, we called it back then, and restoring Old City Hall came under a note, and we took on debt to expand those. And that's an example at the time when we said, hey, we're in great financial shape, look at the interest rates on these. And my position then was, these are great, these are beautiful, but I don't think these are the highest priority projects for us to focus on. And so it was a good debate, the debate we should be having over priorities. And so today, when Ms. Raymond comes forward and says, you know, this is our courts, let's take care of what we have, I 100% agree with that. And I think the question is what is the condition of the courts? I've learned that we've got some challenges there, electrical issues, and obviously it's not all bad. The reason that the community wants these things fixed is because it's popular and people enjoy it. It's a big reason why they love to live here, and our staff engages with them and runs programs and facilitates all the ins and outs of maintaining and running the facilities. And with that, they get wear and tear. And so today, having those funds available, but it is important. And I think we got here because we did not do those things back then that we just said tonight. And so as we're looking forward, it would be nice to pull $2 million off the $6.2 million multi-generational facility in Cape Center alone right now to knock out all these flooding issues. And that's what I was screaming as passionately and respectfully as I could. And the best thing I could say was, well, at least let's get the public, let's get workshops engaged. And it didn't feel right. And today we are now fully operating that facility, and we are learning and trying to improve, but it's an asset now that has a very different maintenance plan than what existed there prior. Very different. And the same with City Hall. But with that, it doesn't ignore the efficiencies that were gained, right? I do not deny that city trying to do business over there at that point with multiple offices was at a point, you know, became counterproductive. But each step of the way as we go through these capital projects, it's never that, well, it's one or the other. It's maybe we could have done it, you know, this way, a little bit less money, and thought about those priorities. So here we are today. The past is the past. That's water under the bridge. And my hope is that we look at the priorities today. And I'm not sure, it's not necessarily each specific priority, but public safety in respect to the budget, largely represented really in every area aspect, but the big ones, Brevard County Sheriff's Office, and our fire department. Unless our city manager has a concern or an issue, I fully support those budgets. I do not think that we need to make any cuts. From my understanding, that budget is the best budget forward. And we've heard some trades as far as delaying the fire truck for a year, and then taking the opportunity to expand the team. And I do remember that prior to COVID, and sharing those expenses at the port. So police and fire is not something that I'm looking at as being the issue. Are they expensive? Yes, but I cannot justify not making sure that those two divisions have what they need to support and keep our community safe. And then when we go back to the city, in the public safety, wastewater, extremely important for the public health. We got real problems if that starts failing. So I think wastewater is important, and obviously stormwater is probably the most visible challenge that we see in certain areas. And I think we've got many ideas. As far as how it looks different, one example would be, you know, Presidential Streets Master Plan evolved. I think that has turned into something that is going to be a great project if we do it, however we do it, whatever we decide. And as we move into this year, I do not feel good about, going from Ridgewood to A1A and making a beautiful stretch all the way through for one street prior to allocating funds maybe in a different way. Maybe Presidential Street's just an example, is we're going to put 250,000 and either not spend, do nothing with it and wait maybe another year or two, or we're going to spend a portion of it to get one more step closer. But the lion's share needs to go into those issues that I think we're talking about today. And so that is something I'm looking at. As far as, and I think we should go to the CIP sheet. And I'll try to, I guess, page 82. Now if this one, well, I would see it. Thank you. So, and I love the grant funding column. That's really helpful. So fire, we're through that, going down to infrastructure maintenance. I want to fully support infrastructure maintenance in whatever we can. We talked about making sure all the lights in the city, no dark spots. I've seen progress being made on that along Ridgewood and other areas, well-lit streets, safe streets. We've all the things that fit under these buckets, sidewalks, the specific projects, obviously with Oak Lane getting a lot of our attention, rightfully so. As we scroll down to Parks and Rec, I know that this budget changed and it was, and I believe Todd and Molly and the department worked hard to try and make something work here. One of the changes was that the promenade or the civic hub.
That's in the CRA, Mayor.
Okay. And yes, I thought there was one other thing. I think that's it. So roughly there's $175,000 made across 4 projects, with the biggest of those 4, the $115,000 for the tennis court resurface. So if we could now go to the CRA, and I'll try to end it there and go to the summary sheet. Perfect. Thank you. So these are, city manager, if I understand, these are all the current CRA expenditures.
Projected for 24, 25, correct? Yes, sir. John,
Canaveral, oh, go ahead.
John, are we?
If I can make a comment?
Yeah.
Okay, so yes, Mayor, these are the current. However, based on the, we had given you a new CRA sheet, I believe, because based on that hit we took, because the county went to 2.9 on its millage, that brought the presidential street number down to 1.3 million.
Plus, these were also written at the time that we were going to be at the top number with the revenue too.
That's correct. So
we haven't adjusted any of these down.
Right. We did it. Yeah, we didn't adjust these down yet, but when you see your next budget at the budget hearing on the 3rd, you'll see where the presidential streets is down to 1.250.
At middle of the road.
Yeah, and let's see what else we got. And I think that's the only one. Yeah, that's the only one that got hit because of that Brevard County thing. So that goes from 1.6 million. So we would anticipate, if we even get there, that we try to spend $1.2 million on a presidential street in 24, 25, if we were to achieve that.
So it's 1.6 obviously in this version.
Why did it go down?
Go down to 1.2?
Remember that the county will never go, even if our millage is 3.5, there was a time that they just gave us 3.5, the equivalent. But what they do now in the last 6 years, whatever, well, theirs came in at 2.9 when we didn't have the information from the county yet. So we were estimating that theirs might be like 3.3, 3.45 or something. And they went all the way down to 2.9. So then when we applied that, that number went from 1.6 because they're only going to give us based on 2.9. And that took it down 3. That took it
But
down.
why did that take it down?
Our revised interlocal that we did a few years ago with them said it's going to be to the lower of the two millage rates. So whether the city's the lower or the county's the lower, whoever is the lower, the county's portion will be.
They weren't going to
calculated at the lower.
reward our millage if it was higher. They were going to say, sorry, but our millage is this. So that's all you get. So it
But
comes
why
back.
does that, if the cost is 1.6 million to do presidential streets, I understand the change in revenue that you explained, but why would that change the cost of the presidential street?
It changes how much we can spend.
Yeah, because we lost $300,000 when that happened. So that's
we
where
lost
we took
revenue.
it down. Yeah, well, yeah, we
But if
lost revenue.
something cost $100,000 and we expect to make $100,000, but we only get $75,000, suddenly that park doesn't cost any less. So I'm just, I mean, we could build a $75,000 park, but the cost of something or the estimated
Right.
CIP was 1.6 million.
Well,
But there was no change in the estimates of the cost of the project. We reduced it because
Oh,
we
no.
didn't have the funds.
I could bring some clarity to that. So we had anticipated, based on the money that we would get in the CRA, that we would be able to give $1.6 million based on the numbers we had to the presidential street.
Okay,
However, so that wasn't based on like our previous community development director, when he gave us a wag on what he believes he could spend.
got
He
it.
had put that in there, but in essence, that was never like something that where he had a document that said, oh, we're going to do 1.6 million. So that's why we put the lion's share in there, you know, because we know it was going to be expensive, whatever, but that was just an estimate. And then when this happened with the county, we took that money away. So it's not like we knew that we were going to spend 1.6 million. No, we were putting the lion's share in presidential streets because that would be the most expensive project in the CRA. So
The cost, estimating the cost was really based kind of relative or as a percentage of what we thought. So we bring in this, we'll try to.
Exactly.
Okay, so we're at 1.2 today.
1.250,
So, but that's a $400,000 cut
300, yeah.
that we didn't really talk about.
Oh, well, that came about because of the change in
calculation.
the,
It was
what's
just
that?
the calculation from the
The
county.
calculation from the
But
the
why wouldn't that
calculation.
be?
Well, let me add to that. That came from the calculation of the what the county did, but then you have to add in another, look at your sheet here, because when y'all decided to go to middle of the road, right? It
Mhm.
reduced the amount of money coming in for taxes, and that reduced us to 120K there. So
100.
reducing taxes, the percentage we got a sheet, we do all this stuff on that actually, we took another hit of 120K because you guys reduced the millage rate, our millage rate down to middle of the road. And if you keep coming down, the deduction to the CRA keeps going up because we're only giving so much of that tax money, our tax money, to the CRA.
I got that.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. And so but the way I understood is in the way that the memos were presented, it would be, hey, we would have a 200,000, or I guess a $400,000 deficit had that reduction not been made, right? So middle of the road we couldn't sustain a $1.6 million project if we
Right.
if we went
So we
there.
took a $420,000 hit collectively from bringing our millage down and the county coming in with their low millage.
But we didn't have to reduce this project. We
We
could have
did not,
reduced
but
other projects. I
that's-
guess my question did we discuss reducing this project or was that staff's,
Recommendation.
which is totally, I get it. I mean, it's obviously the biggest project and probably the most least firm number that we have a good grasp on. But that's a lot of money. I mean,
Yeah, that was a
when we're
big
over
hit.
there sweating about 100,000 here, 200,000. And so if it's at rollback, will it go less than 1.2?
If it goes rollback,
Yes.
yes, the answer is yes. It goes down 258,000. So it'll go down from 100 and say 25,000 to 250,000. Oh yeah, because now you're
So
bringing the number back. So you're not only, wiping out, so to speak, your own millage for the general fund for the city, you are also reducing how much you can give to the CRA.
Okay, so
So if you
These
go,
are the-
oh, go ahead.
these are the two
Mhm.
that I think we have to do something with. There's no way that we can deal with flooding issues in my head and keep $1,050,000 into the civic hub and 1.6 or 1.2. And that's a bit difficult is those are big changes in numbers. And today in our head, we don't know. Let me just back up and say the total revenue. So if I go to, we got 3.5 million. It's just the total revenue at rollback. I mean, we're going to spend last year, our operating budget. So I'm going to go to page 13 again. And going back to the budget, the bottom line total expenditures. Page 13, total expenditures in 21, 22, go up a little bit where it says 30,000, right? Yeah, the bolded 30,166, I'm sorry, 30,166,000. That's what we actually expensed in 21, 2022 across really everything, right? I mean, that's an all-encompassing number from all the funds.
Right. There was a lot of activity going on that year.
But that money went out though.
Mm-hmm.
But we passed a 33, but we brought in 33 million, roughly. And so as we just kind of follow those expenditures, then it was 25 million the next year, but we passed the 26. So, there's roughly 4 million, but I know it doesn't always work out this way. And then this year we passed a $37 million, a really, really big jump. And so do we know what our year to date, all encompassing just where we are today with a couple more months left in this budget on total expenditures of the 37 million that we adopted and passed?
Absolutely.
What is that number?
We might have to go to BSNA for that, right? We'd have to go to BSNA, Mayor, but I can get you that answer. Monthly financials.
Okay.
Our monthly financials will show that too. But we are presently, we're through June, so we can give you a total of that, and we'll be doing July's here around the 24th, 25th of August, so.
Okay. So yes,
Just write that down. We'll get him what the total expenditures are to date. Okay, through July 31st, but we won't have that for another 7-8 days.
So adding new things, as we've said, is only going to add overhead and expenses. If we take inventory of what we have, tennis courts, the existing today, that's really important. And we added the Civic Hub. We added that property to our responsibilities when these other issues were not being addressed. And I think today I am skittish of anything new, and I think that's shared from what I'm hearing. And I am also sharing to have a forward preventative, proactive mindset on the essentials. And with that, I believe that we should, what I'd like the middle of the road to be one day is council's debate is that middle of the road's rollback. That's staying, you're heading down here in my head, and it's however we want, but that's stay in the course, right down the middle. But the option we haven't seen is a reduction. And so my head always says, show me middle, 5% less, show me 5% more. And we do ask, our city manager's right, we do go through the wish list of items prior to confirming revenue. And so it's like, we want all this, and then, but we only have this much, so then we'll add on debt or things or grants, whatever we can do to make it work. But however we get there, to me, there's a lot of opportunities in those just two projects alone, over 2 million there. But it's really hard for me to nail down a specific percentage. I think a 3.2 rollback rate is like a 5% reduction. I'd love to say 10%, but again, we've almost doubled this, and the citizens really are the ones who benefit when their line item from the city of Cape Canaveral doesn't become more expensive, at least for the property taxes. And I'm not even talking about all the other fees, stormwater fees, and everything else. So I think we have enough funds to get this done. I would like to see us take a reduction in the millage rate, give a real tax decrease, and then because some of these numbers are so loose, so high, I mean, 1.6, that's $500,000 or $600,000. That's a 10% tax decrease right there, 5%. I mean, just over. And so we can do this, and I think we can take care of what we have, mentality, and really, I cannot get on board with expanding responsibilities until I think these issues are handled. And we can do it. I believe that. And I think if there isn't enough in the capital improvements, there's an opportunity to do, as, and I've said this in the past, is to go into some of these budgets and just do a percentage decrease, not including those essential services, police, fire, but in those other operating budgets, I think we have some room. And if it means that we have quotes on something for, just say, $100,000, and we're budgeting 80,000 for it, right? It would be better to try and get it at 80,000 or just hold until you can for non-essential items. And so those are my comments. I really hope we can figure out a way to do a tax decrease to where it results in maybe down towards the $6 million range. But I honestly think we can do more. I think that the reserves that we have of $3.2 million, 17 to 20% of our budget roughly, is there for those things that we were talking, those real problems that come. And like we've known with natural disasters, the feds, ARPA, and those funds tend to come. We have the reserve as well to maybe float. So I can look residents in the eyes and say, we got 3.2 million unobligated to deploy and to use. City manager and I, even there's some other ways. We have a healthy CRA. We're rebuilding in some areas and trying to go strong and get better at our processes and procedures. And right now to expand that civic hub or put $1 million into that, I think we got the property. That was the big push. Get the property secure. We got it. Maintain it. It's creating value today with some parking, but take that $1 million and let's go fix some of these more urgent problems. And just maybe, we can move projects up if we press, such as the infrastructure maintenance building. I would really I've seen that. It looked rough when I saw it and I haven't been out there. And so, and the message has been the same out there. And so I think.
But where would we get the funds, Mayor, to do that? Where would we get additional 700,000?
It's not in the CRA.
No, it's not in the CRA, but it's not in the CRA. Plus, if we're going to reduce, even if you go to rollback, if you ever wanted to do a project like that now, there's no place else to get the money but unobligated reserves. And you can't really go into departments and say, let me cut this 2%, this 3%, whatever, because just to give an example, I mean, you can't buy less toilet paper. You can't buy less this. You can't buy less chemicals. You see what I'm saying? So to go into the operational expenditures, there's not a heck of a lot that's, overstated there. That's why we go to the capital projects and say, is this really something we need to do? Because that's where the bigger dollars are. But, and I don't want to go down this road, but, it's up to council. If the unobligated reserve, if there's something that you want to do that's so bad and you have to use the unobligated reserve, you don't want to do that. But if you do, that's at the council's discretion. So.
And to be clear, I'm saying not to use the reserve to fund this year's budget. I'm saying if what the reserve was intended, we do have for an emergency, right? Those big problems that come up. Harbor Heights is a good example. We heard Mr. Russell Lamar come in and he said this years back, 7 years ago when I was in there, and he said it before talking about, the flooding and take action in their own hands. Those things, I think if it was happening there, as of today of where we are we in good condition to manage stormwater flooding? I think overall in this city, I would put us at fair. And that's my 2 cents as a mayor, not an expert. In some areas, I think we're excellent. In some areas, poor. So overall, we're doing a fair job, but we are progressing. We're making the strides. To me, those are priorities. Oak Lane, and I just shared infrastructure maintenance as a project that I think is more important than the Civic Hub. Far more. And we're trying to do the Civic Hub this year, and our team out there and the photos that I saw is operating under that. I can't feel good about that. And I know that the source is the problem, right? It's CRA. So how do you pay for it? I'll stop.
Well, that's in the general fund. That building is infrastructure maintenance, so.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Can't do that.
You can't do that because you have all your monies obligated in the CRA. Where are you going to pull out? What are you going to pull out of? And I don't think we can do that anyway.
There's
Well,
also,
hold on. I just want to intervene here because this is really important to me. You're saying I don't think we can do that. You're saying we can't. can we confirm, state what
Absolutely.
the problem is and confirm?
The problem is there's, in the CRA statute, there's a rule that says if you have any project that you're proposing to do in your CRA cannot have appeared in the general fund proposed budget for 5 years.
I had a discussion with Anthony about that, and he explained it to me that if something is in the, it has to be 5 years away from the original planning of the CRA. The CRA plan, 5 years away from that, not 5 years out of the budget.
He called me today too. Yeah. And so, but when you understood that, it'd be like 5 years away, meaning that if Oak Lane was planned in the CRA 5 years ago, let's just say.
No,
And
the
the 5 years-
CRA plan was done in 2012.
Right, but what he's saying though is it has to be 5 years removed. Todd, check me on this and we could check this tomorrow. It has to be 5 years removed. So if the Oak Lane project was in the 2013 budget and then was taken out of the budget because we weren't doing Oak Lane, and then 5 years later, now it's in the general fund budget, then it could be funded in the general fund.
That's not how I understood what he said.
That's what he
And
what
he
he was
said
saying. Because he called me today. But we could confirm, Mayor, on the 5 or 3 year, the 5 year rule, 3 year rule, and tell you when it appeared. Because right now, we don't have the funds in the CRA to pay for Oak Lane right now.
But is it set in stone that the money for the civic hub, the 1.5, whatever portion of that is the CRA, the 550 or 510,000, whatever it is in the
Right.
CRA?
I see where
Is that
you're
set in
going.
stone that we have to spend that?
The only
on-
ones that could set that in stone are the council that's sitting up here. So if the council said, we're not going to do the civic hub and wanted to do Oak Lane, and if Oak Lane qualified, I'm just saying, but I have to check, and Oak Lane qualified to be in the CRA, well, that's at council's discretion. I mean, you decide what projects get done.
Well, we are, I think,
That's
we're trying
what
to
we're trying to
exercise
do.
discretion, and we said, this is of interest to do, and we're being told we're not, while we're willing, we're not able.
Well, we're going
To
to
do
check we're going to check drill. I want to see where
Well, I know.
that appeared, because, you know, sometimes we have projects that they put in the CRA, they appear, and then for some reason, we're not doing them, and then they show up again, and they're in the
But it says
they're
in
in
the
the general fund.
statute, 5 years from the conception of the plan. That was 2012. It's 163,
And that's 163 is what I did.
370.
Well, if that's how it pans out, Mickey, I'm not going to argue with you, of course. I mean, if it
Well, I'm just-
applies,
It's an option that we could think about. I mean,
if that's the option, but I really want to go back tomorrow and check where this Oak Lane has appeared in the CRA. And it has, I believe it has, but
5 years
how long
from
ago? How long ago
2012.
did it? Yeah. And then we check the statute and see if the statute matches up with where it was, and then we could tell you. So yes, the answer to your question is yes, we could check it, and if it applies, then
Well, I'm just
Council's
saying,
discretion.
it comes across that we can't do anything with the CRA money when it is not set in stone. The council makes the decision on what we do with it.
That's right. This presidential streets, that's a CIP. It was agreed upon with the council as we've been moving forward. If council decided it doesn't want to do a presidential street, staff isn't saying you can't do that. You can't do that. We're just here to support you.
Anthony did say in my email, which is on my phone in my car, that the CRA board would have to approve it. So, I mean, we can make a decision, but it goes to the CRA to make the decision to move the money around or whatever, which is an option as
Yeah,
well.
there's options. I mean, but that's up to council.
So this is a question of, what are we able to do? The total amount on that was 5.
What are we talking about? Oak Lane? Well, Oak Lane
Sure.
has a stormwater component at 300,000 and then
In
it
the
has the
general-
550 in the general fund. Yeah.
So if we funded it with the 550 from the CRA, that would free up that 550 to maybe get the,
So the desire, the direction is we are interested in moving the 550,000
to me,
out.
it's, the infrastructure maintenance building has been in the budget or on the budget, off the budget since 2008. If this is the year we do things that have been out there for so long, that have been neglected because we've taken on these big projects, it's time to do them, to me. And it's, the same with the tennis courts. How did they get so dilapidated in a short amount of time? Because we haven't spent the time or the money to take care of what we have, because we've taken on new shiny projects.
And the new projects take longer. So we can't ignore the maintenance of these things.
And every new project, like you were saying, Kay, is a maintenance cost. And when we get these estimates on the CIP, it says operating cost, $15,000 for maintenance, operating and maintenance for the city park redevelopment. That's not true. Civic Hub, $3,000 for operating and maintenance. That's not true. I mean, just alone, the splash pad is $51,000 just for maintenance on that. I mean, these things are good, great for our people, but our residents, but we have to think that further down the road than just right now. And, I just think when we think about what's important to the residents, let's take care of what we have. I hear that all the time from our residents. They love Cape Canaveral. They love the things we have, all the parks, the recreation places, the things we have. A1A safety is a big major thing. We funded A1A, put money aside for the last few years. I don't know what happened to that. It's not in the budget now, but it was money that we could match or upgrade things once, Florida Department of Transportation is doing their things.
The money for A1A, that's not a true statement. The money for A1A is in the budget. You had us put, it's a non-departmental. Joey, if you bring it up, we put that money in our SPIA, just as you asked us to. What is it, Joey? $24,000 a year for 10 years. Let's see. Yeah, 24,000 every year. We're putting 24,000. So that's not a
Where
that's not a
is
correct
that?
statement.
Okay,
I mean,
my
Kind
mistake.
of replenishment.
it's a non-departmental.
Let's just
Okay,
get to the page.
I didn't know that's where it was.
It's on page 45.
So 24,000 a
Yeah,
year.
A1A replenishment. You asked us to do that for 10 years. We're doing it.
Page 45?
And we still only
Mhm.
have $24,000.
Page 45,
What is the?
middle of the page. It's called A1A replenishment.
Well, I think we only have 24,000 because it looks like we didn't start it until 23.
We started in 20, yeah, it just started. You just approved it
Yeah.
last year. Yeah.
So 24.
And 24, and then we'll keep putting 24 in for 10 years as directed by council. And then that's sitting in an investment account, accruing a little bit interest.
Or two.
Okay, so my mistake on that one, I didn't know it was in the non-departmental. Trees are important to our city. We lose trees. Do we have money in the tree bank? Do the people that take down these trees put money in the tree bank? Of course, code enforcement is always important. Short-term rentals are very important to our residents. The short-term rentals are edging out families, which edges out the school. I mean, the things that are important to the people that live here is good schools, good quality of life, good parks, a great beach, things like that. You know, economic development we've talked about is very important. I'm happy that the $50,000 in there for the development plan is there. You know, like, and things, I think, you know, like Kay was saying, we have to think about the maintenance down the road for these things. There'll be maintenance for the presidential master plan streets. There'll be, you know, if we can do more low cost things like Tim was saying and achieve the same results with the stormwater, that's our basic reason for doing this. And it costs less money. I think we should look at that. And, you know, just brainstorming and what John said about operating expenses, you know, just looking at it, if we took every department except police and fire, because that's our obligation as a council to keep our people safe, and cut their operating expense by 10%, just, you know, that would save some money. I mean, I'm just,
Yeah, I know that's, and I'll tell you, no disrespect, but that is so unrealistic. We would not make it. This budget would not make it if we took 10% of each department. It just wouldn't. And just a couple other thoughts. And I'm willing, you know, obviously whatever council's direction is, and the city managers, of course, I'm willing to follow. But if based on some of the things you're talking about now, if you were going to turn the table on the CRA on the civic hub, if that was something that council was going to do, it would have to do it extremely quickly. You would have to have a CRA meeting in the middle of August, in the middle of August, whenever that could come up, because you would have to go ahead then and change that budget. And of course, tomorrow we will get an answer to the mayor tomorrow on whether or not Oak Lane qualifies to be done in the CRA. We'll get him that answer. And if that was the case, and you want to there's a lot of work to be done to get that, if you want it to be reflected, because by the first hearing and the third, you know, we're a little bit late in the game, if that's what council's doing. And I think what I'm hearing too is, and Mayor, correct me if I'm wrong, your intention is to go to rollback. Is that
Below.
below?
The tax decrease. I haven't been asked what my intention was, and I'm sharing it. I'm just being straight.
Yeah.
I've always wanted a tax decrease.
I
Never got one.
Yeah.
Never, well, no,
You mean
actually,
below rollback?
below the rollback rate.
I just don't know how you fund, I don't know how you would fund that.
That's okay. Let's do this. Todd, I saw you over there, I think, working, and thank you if it's to address the chapter, the question.
Couldn't find it easily. No,
Okay,
couldn't find it.
so I just don't understand.
Yeah.
If you spoke to the city attorney today, and have you heard?
I got an email, and if I could be excused for a minute, I'll get it out of my car.
Let's take 7 o'clock now. Let's take 10 and then try to get out of here. At least out of this part of the conversation, and try to go towards getting on the same page. So let's try 7:10. If we're here at 7:05, we can start earlier.
Mayor,
And that'll allow us
regardless,
to chat and talk through
Yeah.
some of this.
regardless of what she finds out, tomorrow staff will have to do the research into the previous budgets to see where it appeared in the budget.
See if
Yeah.
it triggered the criteria.
Mhm.
Okay. We
Okay.
can take advantage of this. Manager. All righty, everyone. It is 7:09 PM. Call the meeting back to order. We're in our workshop here, working through the budget. And we just left off with, I restate, I think a request to confirm whether or not we are able to fund the Oak Lane project out of the CRA.
Yes. And I can just read for the record the email I got from the city attorney. The meeting last week, because I had asked him last Monday for his interpretation of this statute, got canceled, so I completed my review today. This section is not applicable here because the CRA plan was last updated in 2012. The CRA could contribute to the Oak Lane project because roadway and streetscape improvements are generally listed as authorized strategies, programs, and projects in the Cape Canaveral CRA plan. However, as for this fiscal year, Mr. DeLeo advised me that currently all of the CRA revenue is already allocated to other authorized expenditures. Similar to the current year, 2023-24 city budget, the proposed city budget for 2024-25 currently allocates funding for Oak Lane project under the general fund, $550K, and the Stormwater Enterprise Fund, $300K. See the proposed budgets, pages 82 and 150. Therefore, whether Oak Lane is funded in the proposed city budget is a policy decision for the city council to make. On the other hand, if the CRA is going to budget funds for Oak Lane, the CRA board will need to meet to make that decision. Regards, Anthony. 163,370.
Thank you very much. This, to state back, Anthony states that the city council, and for this meeting we are the city council today, is a policy decision we would need to make, which changing the budget is what I assume that is that policy decision. And then we would need to meet, and I think our finance director helped us with what I didn't hear in that email was the timing of that needs to happen soon for the CRA board to come to order at a future meeting, properly public meeting. And
Right, because if you want to, let's say you wanted to say, hey, you know what, we're not going to do the Civic Hub thing, which I guess stormwater I know is important to you, but that Civic Hub stormwater contains $550,000 a stormwater project. So I don't know if it will be up to the city council if they want to wipe that out and do the Oak Lane in the CRA. So the only thing I want to check, Mayor, is I'm listening to what Mickey's messages from the attorney, and I agree, but I do want to see exactly where the Oak Lane project appeared in the past budgets. That's all I want to look at. And then if the attorney says it's still a policy thing, then the council will have to determine, if they want to change how the money's being spent in the CRA and if they want to do Oak Lane in the CRA.
is it in this budget that you have?
That's this, that's this year's. I have that budget here too. Yeah. Let's see. Well, yeah, that will be probably show up in the
Audited?
general. Let's see. Yeah, because this year,
I would feel really good if we
Yeah, it's not
walked
in
out of
there.
here knowing that we could do that.
it's not in the CR, the the CRA contains, pretty much the Civic Hubs in the CRA too, Civic Hub 2 for this year. But if we went back to infrastructure maintenance, let's just see if Oak Lane improvements IM 7 this year. Okay. But so there was 250K in this year's budget. However, we just never got to it, right? It never went out for bid or whatever. It's going out for bid now. So that's why it's been moved to the next year's budget for 550K. So
In
that's
addition-
how that changed, Mayor. IM 7 on page 82. So that's how that,
In the green book or
yeah,
the
the
proposed
green
budget?
book,
Okay, so I don't think it'll be online.
page 82. I got the book here if you need it.
No, I was,
Yeah.
for our city clerk and help team is helping it. It's probably not viewable, but yeah, 82. So the general fund summary?
Yeah.
That's the equivalent on the screen, I guess, of this year's. Perfect.
So everything was moved into 24, 25 because never got to Oak Lane.
It's I am a 7.
Mm-hmm.
250,000 was budgeted for 2023, 24. And then another 250,000 was budgeted in 24, 25. You're saying
It all got moved out to 24, 25.
that we did not spend anything?
No.
So we have $500,000?
Well, we're budgeting, I believe, 550 for the next year here now, based
Well,
on
no, I'm saying, do we have $500,000 in the bank to pay for this?
$500,000 in the bank for, in this budget year coming up. It's in this budget. And yes, because of the bid that just came in, we would be able to fund it in the IM budget, and you'd still be able to go to rollback if you took $239,000, cut that from the general fund. That's how you get there. But this, what y'all are saying is you want to move it to move Oak Lane to the CRA and reduce costs in the CRA. So that's a major thing that the CRA board would have to meet and discuss.
Well, I'm just trying to confirm that if I'm looking at the page 82 in the green book, you were saying that we adopted in $250,000 to be allocated towards Oak Lane.
Right.
And then we did the same thing basically the next year. So that money has came in.
It's a budget though.
The city has that available.
Yes, right now, we are in July or August, we're in August, and we have a budget which has revenue and expenditures expected. So if this does not get completed, it's a budget, and a budget is just the revenues minus the expenditures equaling, contingency. Then if we finish if our revenues are that much higher than our expenditures in its totality in the general fund, then yeah, then that's money left. Yeah, that's money in the bank.
And it would
Okay,
be- It
but
would
if-
be 250,000,
Right.
right?
Yes.
But you got to
I
remember,
understand.
you
Thank
got to remember, it's a budget. And although if we don't spend money on this project, but our revenues fall short, that's why we do audits and financial statements, because we never know how we're going to actually end up if this falls short and this doesn't get done and this, it's a whole thing.
So we budgeted that line item
Mm-hmm.
for the expense.
Mm-hmm.
We've got budgeted into the revenue, $250,000 of the revenue from 2023 to 2024's budget.
Right.
If we didn't spend it and we hit our budget perfectly, that could end up being in the surplus number that rolls over to the next year.
Right. In most cases, you never know how that's going to end up.
So in your prediction, do you believe that we'll have a shortfall or we will have the funds?
what I'm looking at, I'd have to look at how we're gonna end up in July, and see approximately gonna run. Yeah.
As of June, we had 26.7 revenue, 24 expense million. And to put that out to the year, it would be 35 revenue, 32 expense.
Yeah, but we don't know the variables that would affect that.
But
So,
that gives,
No,
that
I
gives a
wouldn't know,
good
I wouldn't
idea.
know exactly, but I
Can
would,
you,
I
can you
know.
repeat what you just said? Because that gives a good idea of where we stand right now.
Yeah. I mean, revenues and expenses, if we were projecting, we have 35, but this is just the budget number that, and we cannot predict exactly where we'll end up, but we do know at the end of every month with actuals, like the end of June.
Yeah,
Then
and-
we do know, but, and this is just you'd have $35.6 million and you'd end up spending 32 million, okay?
Uh.
But, there's
We have expenses.
a lot that could happen in
We
July.
have
August.
expenses for the remainder,
Yes,
remainder of the year and closing out the budget.
Yes,
So,
yes.
okay.
Yeah. So I don't expect to have an extra $3 million at the end of this year, if that's the question. I don't know what that number is.
but that gives a good idea.
Right, but
Because
our
we're in
anticip-
August. We
Yeah.
we haven't finalized and closed out August
No,
budget
no,
yet,
no.
or
It-
expenses. And
No,
we haven't finalized September, but our fiscal year starts on October 1st. So we know we're probably not the other way around. We're not.
right,
outside.
but I could tell this, if, in reference to the mayor's question is, I don't see our expenditures this year exceeding our revenues.
Okay.
Okay,
Yeah.
I can't give you an exact number, Mayor. If I could, I probably
No.
would be working in, SpaceX or something. Just kidding.
Thank you. That's helpful.
Yeah.
Okay. Mayor Pro Tem?
I'm not trying to pick a fight. I'm not trying to be disrespectful. I'm just trying to understand.
Go ahead. Yes.
So you say that there is no way if we cut 10% off of operating costs, not the fire, not the,
Right.
that we will not make it.
Absolutely. And I'm going to tell you why.
Thank
Because
you.
that totally contradicts what this council is trying to achieve. And that's to maintain what we have. And those operating expenditures in our budget is there to maintain. And maintain means a lot of things, like if we have training we got to go on, right? Maybe we've done our training to a certain dollar amount to send Joey to school or send this one here, that one there. Well, we're not putting extra money in there. We're doing our estimates. We're putting that in there. If you take 10% out, maybe we fall short in training, and then maybe we fall short in buying supplies for our maintenance people stuff. So yeah, that is I can't predict that. That goes against what you are talking about in maintaining what we have.
And what you had stated earlier, I just want to verify, is the place we would need to look at are the CIPs.
Absolutely.
So it would be
Absolutely.
the capital improvement projects.
And if you start moving things around, you just gotta
And we'd
be
have
careful.
to look at those to see which ones are maintaining what we have or not, if I'm understanding correctly.
Yes. And just to add a little thing here, I know this was in your last package or whatever, but if we went to rollback a $300,000 property, if we go to rollback, that person's taxes would be $44.25 less. So I don't know how low you want to go on getting people's taxes below breaking even from last year. But I mean, a $500,000 property, 73.75. And the only thing I'm saying, Mayor, is I don't know how you could go down from 6.6 down to 6 million. I don't know where you would get that $600,000 from.
How did we get by last year on 6 million?
We got by on 6.
Or how are we doing it right now?
In terms of,
We just said we're not going to have a shortfall.
well,
And I think
Mayor, I don't know the unexpected. I'm not, you know,
Sure, we-
looking in a crystal ball, but
And I know things
Joey
go
could
up.
tell you where are we at, I could tell you where we're at the end of June.
But just how can businesses do it? How can individuals do it? I mean,
Well-
we all have to face that challenge that, hey, I'm not gonna, every year I don't always bring in the same amount of money for good reasons in this case too. Yes, $45 for one resident, maybe an average, but across the board, it's significant amount of capital that can be redeployed back into their homes and their economies and improving their properties and having extra income. So yes, I just want to,
Yeah, well, I would say that businesses, the reason why we can't do a businesses operate with profit. The city takes in so much revenue to cover its expenditures. We're not a business. Although the enterprise fund is like a business because it charges user service fees with the utility bills and whatever. So that's more like a business. But the general fund is there to collect its revenue through taxes and communication services taxes and revenues and grants, and to sustain the people that work for the city and the expenditures and whatever capital items in general fund they want to achieve. Now, as of the end of June, how much, I want to look at what's the taxes that on your monthly financials? I just want to know what the taxes are, where we're at, what we're achieving. Mhm. Because we had, what, 6.254 that's in the budget. And what's it showing us for the taxes we collected so far? Oh, okay, so it's very, very close. At this point, when it comes to taxes, in the budget, we had 6.254. We've collected 6.365.
what is,
However, that difference, remember, there's delinquent taxes that's in there too. So it's very close to we've collected all our taxes.
6.254,
6.254.
6,250,000.
6,250,000, yeah.
Okay, and what was the other amount in, I guess, dollar value?
All right, so, okay, the adjusted number, the 23-24 budget has 6,260,562 in taxes. We have already got, and we probably won't get many more after this, but 6,365,277. And I could tell you the reason for the difference will greatly be delinquent taxes, because those things have to catch up because, people don't pay their taxes, or
Do we have more?
there'll probably be no more taxes coming in this year.
But the budgeted was 6.3 and we brought in 6.2 roughly?
It
6.36?
was, yeah, the budget was, if you round it, 6.3, and we've taken in 6.3 and an extra $65,000.
Oh, the budget was 6.2.
Yeah,
So we've
6.245.
achieved over the.
Yeah, and we normally
the
do. We go-
5%.
Yeah, we
the
normally
95.
just go over because, yeah, that's a good point, the 5%, but also there's delinquent taxes in there.
Okay, of course. Thank you. I think it's possible that whether the practice is another conversation. But can we put it on paper? Can we show what what was the percentage?
10%.
I'm not saying it's happening, I'm saying, but can we see it? Because
I don't know what line items you'd hit, but I could definitely give you a dollar figure by department, cutting out operational expenses by 10% each.
Well,
If
I
that's
mean,
what you want.
if you, just for an example, there's lots of things, Parks and Recreation, I hate to pick on them, but that's the page that, you know, if
They've
you look
already
at,
cut a couple $100,000 out of their budget.
right. But I mean, if you take each 10% off the total, you know, it's each line item is not reduced by that much money, but totally it would be at 10%, it would be 53,000. I mean, my math is on this little computer phone, but,
You're talking
You know,
about,
like,
go ahead.
like program supplies, we're on page 41.
41.
An increase of 278% in program supplies. So
There's a lot more going on.
10% of that would be what? 4,000,
4,000, 4,100.
right? I mean, 10% of 41.
Oh,
Would be 400.
$416.
Dollars less, so
Yeah.
yeah, 37.
But if you go at the bottom line and you said take 10% out of the 534,000, you're asking me to cut $53,000 off.
Yeah, but if you spread it over each line item,
I don't know, like, that's not practical, Mickey, in the sense that, take contract services, for instance. It has $187,000. Well, those are firm contracts. So if I cut 10% off that 187,000, I have to get the money from someplace else because I can't pay the contractor their money. See what I'm saying? It's not equitable across all lines.
Agreed.
Utilities especially.
But it could
Right.
work on other lines.
It could, but on utilities, 69.6. Well, utilities, that's not always consistent. What if I take
No,
what is that? $696 off that, and then the utility comes in at 73,000 this year. Now I'm losing money again. And here's the other part of when you talk about lowering to rollback, you're already talking about decreasing the contingency. Whenever I fall short here in these budgets, it's the contingency that we do a transfer from to make up the money. You know what I'm saying? If something happens and I need it $10,000 more for utilities, that's what my contingency is there for. And my contingency is already down to 300,000. And if you took the suggested cutbacks just to get to our normal rollback, that would take me down to, I'll find my sheet here. We're already 300,000. That would take me down to 250,000. Now I got $250,000 in contingency. So everything is affected on every move you make. The only thing I would say that I've heard in this conversation would be council's priorities about how they would like to spend the money in the CRA. And if they wanted to shift that around, like the mayor said, that's a policy decision. And, if you wanted to go down that road.
I think that there's certainly line items where it makes no sense. There's going to be line items that will increase and they should increase, like utilities, FPL's rates. And I think and certainly stay the same. But wherever that 10% less, maybe it is 2 or 3 out of the 20 that it could work well for. I think that's a start. And, I can't imagine that we would be in a circumstance on these things that we say, essential items such as office supplies and things that this administration needs to function, computers and all of the operating expenses, that we will work through those challenges. Those things aren't going to, I think, take up the back burner, but There are other things, and maybe, I don't think we've always spent the contingency. We'll have it in there. I don't think we've had to use it. And so that means the contingencies rolled forward maybe a couple years. Maybe we have, but either way, I'd be willing to reduce the contingency. And the example would be, because if those issues did come up and those basic things started to become a concern in future months to purchase, I mean, the council at that point has the ability, whether it be the reserve, if it's 50,000, if it's $200,000 out of the reserve, or what other lawful means we have to make that work. It would be better that we run it like that, because what I see is large amounts of money going into the budget. All the projects don't, some projects get done, some do not. And then we have cash on hand and it rolls over. And in those cycles today, we see, I think, capital money we have on hand and projects that need to be done now. And so trying to get behind those things is really important, taking care of what we have. And maybe that's the criteria, is if it can't fit that mission, yeah, it's a nice project, but not this year.
Well, and I have questions on, as you brought up the operating expenses, like now I'm seeing some things. Like, how did we go from 13,685 in 21, 22 to 41,135 for promotional activities?
Which page?
Page 45.
Thank you.
From 21, and now you're talking now in 24. Well, in 23, 24, we were at 40,000. We could look back at our workbooks and see what was in the workbook, what drove.
Yeah, I know that
What drove that?
inflation is a thing, but I'm also curious on that. What promotional things did we get into that brought that up $30,000 almost, or close to 28,000?
Molly, can you help on that?
Absolutely, Mayor. The reason that I dropped the budget that particular year was because of COVID and the stopping of events. So all I did was put it back up to where it was prior.
Okay. And see, I knew there had to be an explanation for that. Thank you. And that was COVID.
And I think it's very difficult to try to go line by line, because there isn't a person in this room that could predict the ups and downs and the unexpecteds that could happen. And I think we're really close to the line in this budget, the way we're going now. In my past years with the city, I've never been at contingencies that were below 300,000. I remember there were years where 400, 500,000, and we were doing capital projects too. So we were doing really good, taking out good loans and things of that nature. So this all just makes my mind spin, in the sense that we've got a hearing on 3 September, and the changes that I mean, we're discussing, of course, but the changes in like lowering the taxes another 600,000 is, I don't know where you're going to get the money. It's not there. And rollback is achievable this year, but below rollback, I don't know. Mayor, if you could tell me where you want to get the money, I'm going to do whatever the council votes on, but I don't know where you get the money without going to those obligated reserves. I don't have it any other place.
It's record revenue. It's
But-
7 million.
Well, it was 7 million. You brought
Yeah.
it down to middle road.
I think if we took it down, 5% to 3.2, we're going to be at, I guess, low sixes.
But
But it
Joey,
doesn't
put
get around your
3.2 in
point.
there and see what AlcCalc does. Yeah. Let me see what AlcCalc does with 3.2. What's that give you? The general fund, 3.200. No, that's not. 3.2. Are these changing down there?
The general fund's
6.3.
3.2.
Okay,
The general fund revenue's gonna be
6.3.
6.3.
If it took it down to 3.2, that would take you, for the general fund, not counting the 80,000 in the library, that would take you to 6.3. Going 3.2 takes it down another 300,000. So that would just be another 300,000 to make up then.
So total to take out, if it went down to that, the
Just
300,000, but there's,
it's another 300,000. So I think I told you what rollback, it's 239. So 239 plus 300,000, right? 6 point, that was at 6.6. Now this is 3. So yeah, 239, 300, 539,000.
total 539. So if we, I mean, don't,
Questions? On our, we had in our budget this year, from what I understand, we budgeted $150,000 for engineering services for the Civic Hub. Is that correct? Yeah, from the CRA. Have we spent that money yet?
Design services, we haven't spent it yet.
Well,
That's
we're waiting for the
proposal to come in.
proposal to come through, and then you're waiting to approve there's an agenda item for that, right?
Okay, so if we decided to use CRA funds for Oak Lane, for example, and we didn't use them for that yet, that would be, is that just a line item to the revenue, or do we have the money sitting in there? Meaning that we would have that 150,000 because we haven't
Well, we
spent
have
it
the
yet.
we have the 150,000. We haven't spent it because we didn't even do
It's in this year's budget.
it's in this year's budget, yeah.
So, okay,
But we haven't, council hasn't even approved
right. I just
agenda
wanted, I
item.
wanted to understand that because I'm like, wait, we
Yeah.
did we talked about that. So I wanted to make sure we weren't burning money for no reason there that we had already spent or whatever. Okay.
Mr. City Manager, were you able to confirm anything we just, on the question about,
Yeah, I think Anthony and Mayor Pro Tem are correct, and I misremembered it. Here's what it says about the CRA statute. And I'm reading from the CRA statute 163.370, parentheses 2, I'm sorry, parentheses 3A, 3B. The following projects may not be paid for or financed by increment revenues. So these are projects that can't be done with CRA funds. Installation, construction, reconstruction, repair, or alteration of any publicly owned capital improvements or projects, if such projects or improvements were scheduled to be installed, constructed, reconstructed, repaired, or altered within 3 years of the approval of the community redevelopment plan, which is as she said, by the governing body pursuant to a previously approved public capital improvement or project schedule or plan of the governing body, which approved the community redevelopment plan, unless and until such projects or improvements have been removed from such schedule or plan of the governing body, and 3 years have passed or elapsed since such removal or such projects or improvements were identified in such schedule or plan to be funded in whole or in part with funds on deposit within the Community Redevelopment Trust Fund. So she's correct, and Anthony's correct. It's tied to the establishment of the plan.
So.
What was that number again, please, City Manager?
I'm sorry?
What was the statute number again on that, please?
163.370, parentheses 3, parentheses B.
Thank you.
So just one question, and then I think I got my answer that I was going to give the mayor. the 2021, 22, they were going to start Oak Lane and there was $75,000 in that budget. And then in 22, 23, there were 451. So that's the thing I was looking for. So Todd, the thing I'm saying there is this appeared in our general fund in 21, 22. Okay. The following year, it was in there again, but of course we never did the project. Now, based on what you just read, this doesn't interfere with,
It only mattered
Yeah.
through 2015, the year 2015.
okay?
So yes, we can.
That's it appears to be eligible. And it is in the CRA map area.
Very much. Okay. Councilmember Willis. I think it'd be really good if we could decrease taxes for the citizens. I've always felt that way. I'm gonna always feel that way. And it is a challenge to go out and do projects that are low maintenance and sustainable, but I'd rather do less of them and get a good handle on what we've just taken on with the C5 and just become better at managing that every single year as opposed to expanding. And I see the Civic Hub as no different. Is the amount of money going into it, in my opinion, should be an opportunity. And going down the line, if there is nowhere to cut, I have a hard time on any items where we don't have a good firm bid. And it goes both ways. I might be sorry I asked. I understand that argument too, is we, especially on items we just have nothing, we have to estimate. I think those have a lot of risk, and I get that. And we sort of ride that, but property taxes, even, I mean, there's other communities doing this, figuring it out. No two communities are the same. The needs are the same. We're small. We have, 50 plus employees, and I think we can grow certain departments and budgets and increase. It's not this level, but wherever we can find those opportunities, I think I would like to see in 7 years, one proposed reduction, actually, just at least the bottom line, the consolidated, because I think we can do it. And it's something I think we'd be really proud of. And it doesn't have to be divisive, or it's a positive thing. So that's it. Thank you.
I think we need to have a CRA meeting. And at least that way council can choose, because we need to look at, and just like Mr. DeLeo was saying with the operating costs, we have things to maintain and we have things we need to get caught up on, like Mayor Pro Tem Kellum has said, that haven't been done and that have been pushed off. We've got to take a look at how we can creatively finance, Mr. Finance Director, our endeavors. And so maybe that's a discussion we need to have in a CRA meeting.
There's consensus here. We will schedule a CRA board meeting limited to the one agenda item to consider funding Oak Lane through the CRA.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Thank you. In the city clerk's office, we'll get back with you on scheduling that.
And then if those decisions are made and there, Joey will be here to collect that information, and I will see you all on 28 August.
John, when would that CRA board meeting need to be held at the latest?
Oh, I believe you have to do it. You have to do it in the middle of August, or like with the what is it, the council meeting, because you got the first hearing. Because what we're going to do now is we're going to go back based on what we have, which is middle of the road. We will give council, I'm gonna have Joey do a budget, and we will have council based on, you know, the things that happen with the fire department and what have you, right? So we'll have those numbers, and we'll land right there for now. And then when you have your meeting in the middle or the before the council meeting in August, you'll make firm decisions on how you want to restructure that CRA in terms of Oak Lane going to CRA, and then determining if you want to reduce presidential streets or reduce the civic hub. That'll be council's at your discretion. And then you come in like that. And then the mayor comes back and moving the 500K over to the CRA. He, you know, depending on council's vote, they may be able to achieve a lower
So should we limit,
lower millage. But that's,
should we limit that to the one agenda item then? Because that sounds like we need to just,
Yeah, based on
And
what
I-
John is saying, I think we just need to have a general discussion about the CIPs and the CRA.
right.
okay, yes,
Right.
thank you.
And then on the hearing on
September 3rd.
September 3rd, a decision is made by council on where to go with the millage. And then whatever council decides, we will turn around and have a budget ready for you for the second reading in September, so you could approve a final budget.
You.
Okay.
Council, anything else at this time?
I have a question, Mayor. As far as grants go, I don't know, I think someone, maybe Councilmember Jackson, asked for how many grants have we applied for? How many grants have we actually got? Do we
Yes,
have
I have provided that information to Councilmember Jackson.
Can we get that as well?
You can forward them the email. I'll forward the email.
I'll forward to you.
Okay.
Also, I have one question about the grants or one statement, because I had asked multiple questions. I'm trying to understand how this all works because, for example, we have our energy project for the C5, and that Zach is going to apply for a grant for it. And he said, and he had told me that if the grant doesn't come through, that is not a project that he would do. But I'm curious, if we have projects like that, why do we need to have them in the product, can't they be a separate from what we're doing with our overall budget? Because that impacts, what we're doing impacts ad valorem taxes, right? Looking at that. So could we not keep up with grants separately so that if employees feel like, hey, there's this great grant and and it's something that they need for their group, and it's not going to impact our budget one way or the other, couldn't we set something up, some type of accounting method up where that would fall under that and they can apply for it and keep it out of?
Actually, the answer is that's not necessary, and that would get, I don't even know how you do that, be confusing. But the thing is you have the revenues and the grants, right? In the general fund on your revenue page, and then you come over to your expenditures, and you have a CIP, and it says that 75% of, say that CIP, say $100,000, 75,000. If we do this project, you're going to get a grant for 75,000, then the city's paying 25,000. So there's the balancing of the revenue with the expenditure. It's very clear in the budget. what you're saying, no, there is no separate way to put like some type of grant program
Yeah, but
section.
whatever we're saying is in that grant, whether we do it or not, ends up in the bottom line, which impacts our taxpayers, correct?
Well, yeah, but what you're doing is you're doing projects that are grant funded, that are gonna, help the city, make the city better, strengthen the city, whether it be sun tiles or the C5, you're doing those things. And the city is only paying to 25, 35% for it, and
Oh,
the grant's paying for the rest. So it's
I-
worth the citizens to have.
I understand
pay
how
for those
a
things.
grant works.
Yeah, I mean, it's
It-
quality of life type of thing too. I mean,
Well, this is true, but while we're looking at how to cut budget, the reason I'm asking this is because if those things go into the bottom line on our taxpayers and we're looking at how to cut budget, I don't want things that they might get fully funded cut if they're getting fully funded. But we need to make sure that we're not impacting the bottom line if it's a grant item that they're saying, well, if we don't get this grant, we're just not going to do
my
it.
understanding though is from Zach is if we do, let's say we do the BCSO
Solar array.
solar, if we do that, then we're going to get that grant. If we
Well,
do it, we're going to get that 75,000.
and that's a different project. Right, reimbursed, and
Yeah.
I understand that. That's a different project. The one I'm thinking about is the C5
C5, yeah.
Tesla power bank. That one would, he said, that one would be 100% grant funded, is what he was trying to do.
Mhm.
It gives us 4 hours of energy after a storm or hurricane.
Well, if you were to cut that, then whenever,
If that grant doesn't come through, then I have to make a decision as a council person ahead of time whether I think that project is something of value or not. I don't like getting the projects cut that could be helpful in any way if we can get a grant funded.
and if you were to know that, then you would know for that, just if I'm not going to remember the exact amounts, then you would have saved $35,000 because you didn't do the project. $35,000 off the bottom line,
Right,
because that's what the city would pay.
but the taxpayer still would be having
It's
to cover
still
that in the budget.
It's still in the general
to
fund
get
expenses.
to get it back at the end of the year to roll over into next year's budget. And that's why I'm saying, if we have projects like that were 100% grant funded and they're not in that tax basis, rollback or whatever, it would make it to where that project could absolutely move forward. And if it doesn't get funded, no big deal. But we're charging the taxpayer for it regardless up front. And so that makes it to where I have to make a decision as to the value of that.
Well, there's only an impact to the taxpayer or whatever other revenues that could support that, only up to the point where the city pays. But of course, again, and I'm just saying, these grants are hard to get. So that might be just $75,000. If you said, we don't want to do that, that's $75,000. You're just saying, you know what? I don't care about that grant. I'm going to save this right up front right now. And you're going to cut the $35,000 we're going to have to pay on that project.
Right. And that's what my point is because we all know once we charge that increase to cover those things, they never get it back. It's just getting rolled over the next year. So that was my point. I wish there was a way we could do it accounting wise where those projects could be put off to the side and not impact the tax rate.
These are projects that are go, no go based on another agency approving it.
Right.
Yeah.
Because it would open it up for our staff to be creative and look at things that, people might appreciate in the city while we're trying to maintain the infrastructure with the tax dollars that we have. Well, it was a question. It was a thought. Not one that we can do, but okay.
I think We've got some next steps. Continue to talk through this.
What would it look like if we took rollback rate? The middle of the ground between rollback and where we are now, the middle of that.
$109,000 you'd have to cut. If you went between where you're at now, rollback, $109,000.
109?
109.
If we're, middle of the road is 50%, this is the 25%.
This is the middle, yeah.
The middle of the
It's the
middle.
middle, yeah.
Middle of the middle.
It's a 25.
And that rate would be what?
What, the middle? I think, did you put it on here? Or- That would go from 3.4519 to 3.3859. 3.4519 is where we're at now. Go to this is in the general fund, 3.3859. And of course, rollback is 3.3199.
But 109,000,
Mm-hmm.
how would that affect the CRA?
This doesn't affect, let's see, to go lower, that would be half. Let me look at the other sheet. That would be half of what, probably, I don't know, you could plug that in, but I'm just going to do an estimate here. Maybe 80K.
Okay, thank you.
And the email on the grants that you were talking about, is that was going to be distributed?
John, if you could forward that to council.
Yeah, I could forward it to
I
everybody.
would recommend against a council member forwarding something.
Oh,
to
no,
other
no,
council
I'll
members.
do it. I'm being facetious. I will send it to you tomorrow.
Thank you.
Oh, that's very nice of you. Then I don't have to look through my email.
I'm just going to forward it back to you.
This council courtesy is, oh yeah, you gotta watch the blue laws and the green laws and the sunshine laws.
Mayor, may I get a clarification on something? Did we reach a consensus to hold a CRA special meeting on August 20th before the council meeting?
I think that's a fair question. If we did it, we could do it at 5 o'clock. Would that be enough time?
CRA meeting before August 20th
The
at
regular
5
council meeting.
PM preferably?
Yeah.
Oh. Yeah, that's right.
We're already meeting on the 20th at 6, so we could meet just at 5 and hold it then. Assuming nobody has any problems, we'll check with Mrs. Davis as well.
Will 1 hour be enough? Because Kim hasn't gotten to hear any of this and
4:30?
we might need to do that just
Okay.
to allow
Sure.
enough.
Let's plan on 4:30 and we'll just make sure that works for everybody.
I potentially may have a conflict, so.
That will be,
CRA board meeting, and it's a special. Is that right?
Would be a CRA
Okay.
board special meeting. It might be difficult, but I'll see if I can get it noticed on the floor today as quickly as I can.
okay. That works. Do we need an action here? We're good?
I've got consensus on that.
Thank you. All right, council. Any,
So we're not having another.
Council currently does not have another budget workshop scheduled.
Wise going straight from this to CRA and then to a hearing, knowing that John has a limited amount of time on the things that have to happen between now and then, and he's got a lot that has to happen.
That's a question for John.
Mr. DeLeo, after we have our CRA meeting, and we had this one tonight, because things may change in the CRA meeting, we don't know until we have that. Should we have another budget meeting to finalize anything else, or
No.
you will be good for
Just go into
whatever
the
with the
hearing.
hearing? Okay,
And we will adjust things accordingly based on your CRA meeting. But tomorrow, Joey will be putting the things we do know with the middle of the road. And I want him to update all those expenditures and those type of things. So council is looking. After tomorrow, when Joey does this, I would hope council, please don't look at the book that's in front of you today, because that will confuse you. But we'll get all the updates in there for you, and then we'll react to the CRA meeting. And Joey will update those.
Mayor Pro Tem, anything else? Member Willis? Jackson?
I'm good.
I'm good as well. City Manager,
If we're-
anything?
If we're about to adjourn, I just wanted to change the topic and briefly introduce our new building official. Robert Dubovsky is here. He's our new building official.
Hey,
Welcome
Robert.
aboard.
Welcome.
Welcome to the City of Cape Canaveral.
He's a wealth of knowledge, and we've had many very deep discussions about building codes, and I'm very impressed with him.
Thank you. We appreciate you. Okay. Is there anything else, Mr. City Manager, on
No, sir.
verification on anything or
Thank you for all
reports?
the thoughtful work that went into tonight's meeting. It's very helpful for us and gives us some direction. Thank you.
Thank you as well. And thank you, John, Joey, and everyone who's a part of this. I appreciate everyone's hard work. And council, if there's nothing else, looking for a motion to adjourn.
I will second.
All right. Meeting adjourned.
John, enjoy your vacation.